This is my second of 3 regional deep dive videos I'm doing centered on the greater Mwangi Expanse. Because it's my second video detailing this region, I strongly encourage you to watch my first video, focused on the southern Mwangi Expanse. At least the introduction and history sections first, because where possible, I'll try not to focus too much on the parts where histories overlap, and you may miss some valuable details that might be relevant to this region. This video is focused on the western Mwangi Expanse. This region encompasses 3 large geographical features: the Senghor Peninsula, a wild, jungled area commonly referred to as the Kaava Lands; the Mugumo Plains, which is a fertile savanna crisscrossed with small rivers that separates the massive and foreboding central Mwangi jungle from the equally dense tropical rainforests of the Kaava Lands; and the Terwa Uplands, a jagged mountain range that separates the Mwangi Expanse from the mainland settlements of the free captains of the Shackles. This region also comprises 2 main human city-states, which are Bloodcove and Senghor, as well as a few non-human power centers as well, including the Mbeke dwarf sky citadel of Cloudspire, the Ekujae elven city of Akravel, and the Gripply city of Krihirik. Just as I did with my southern Mwangi video, I will discuss the region's history. Then I'll break down the points of interest in the 3 geographical areas, and finally culminating in a look at the major polities in the region as well. Let's start with the history of the western Mwangi Expanse. This region's rich and complicated history begins in the Age of Serpents. It was a time when giants, dragons, and elves ruled the surface, while Serpentfok reigned over the subterranean Darklands. They would eventually emerge and conquer vast swaths of central Garand. In the western Mwangi Expanse, however, the Serpentfok would come across a powerful kingdom that would become the dominant culture there for thousands of years. I am referring to the Cyclops Empire of the Ghol-gan. The exact origins of this kingdom remain a mystery, but evidence suggests that the empire's birthplace was in the center of what is now known as the Eye of Abendego. Prior to Earthfall, the western regions of Garand stretched further into the Arcadian Ocean. The Shackle Islands of today were once part of a vast mountain range that connected Mediogalti Island and Rahadum. The area where the Eye of Abendego now exists was once abundant with lush rainforests and expansive hills, resembling the climate of the Mwangi jungle. Scholars generally agree that the capital city of the Ghol-gan, known in ancient texts as Tsarban, now lies submerged beneath the Eye, as the region collapsed into the ocean during the cataclysmic event that ushered in the Age of Darkness. Although the origins of Ghol-gan remain enigmatic, scholars have made progress in understanding its history through the study of runes and inscriptions found on ziggurats scattered throughout western Garand. The Empire's chronicles have been divided into distinct periods, each marked by significant events that shaped the Ghol-gan and their culture. The least understood period is the prehistoric era, characterized by the initial establishment of settlements and the primitive worship of nature spirits. Most artifacts from this time are still buried beneath the turbulent waters of the Abendego Gulf. By the time the Ghol-gan expanded to include the Shackles and the Sodden Lands, it had already entered into its brief pre-classical period. During this time, Ghol-gan explorers had their first encounters with other intelligent species, such as giants, dragons, and elves. This was followed by what scholars term the Classical period, which stands as the pinnacle of Ghol-gan civilization, marked by remarkable cultural advancements, religious growth, and territorial expansion. The Ghol-gan tribes transitioned from communal cave dwellings to constructing stone and wooden longhouses, eventually establishing large, enduring cities. Many limestone and basalt ziggurats found in the jungles of the Mwangi Expanse were erected during this era, as devout Ghol-gan sought closeness with their celestial deities. The Age of Serpents was followed by a period called the Age of Legend, which marked the establishment of the human nation of Azlanti on a vast island continent that existed in the Arcadian Ocean once. Elven civilization also reached its peak in the Age of Legend. They forged a great kingdom for themselves in the Mwangi Expanse called the Mualijae Kingdom. Like the humans of Azlanti, the Elves were initially friendly with the Ghol-gan, making common cause with them against the Serpentfok. The humans, the elves, and the Cyclops soon realized the heart of this dark empire was located deep in the Mwangi Expanse, so to bring an end to the war, the Azlanti champion Savith launched a campaign that stretched from the coastlines of western Avestan all the way to the heart of the Mwangi Expanse. With great determination, Savith confronted and beheaded Idursius, the living serpent god and lord of all the Serpentfok. However, she succumbed to the venom of the deity soon after her victory. In honor of Savith's bravery and sacrifice, her followers established a remote outpost named Savanthi and laid her to rest there. Interestingly, the Azlanti did not seek to maintain control over the lands in the Mwangi Expanse that they had discovered in that time. As a result, Savanthi stood as a solitary city in a region that remained largely untouched by Azlanti expansion, preserving its isolated status. But the Serpentfok were not wiped out completely at the dawn of the Age of Legend with the beheading of Idursius. Rather, they were pushed underground into the Darklands. Ghol-gan explorers were horrified to discover that beneath many of their own cities, crisscrossing their ancient homes, the Serpentfok had slithered. They named the expansive region of the Darklands located beneath their kingdom Ekujae, or the Sleepless Realm, and they attempted to wrest it from the Serpentfok who remained. Among the ancient writings of the Ghol-gan, a Cyclops commander named Zelekti emerges as a significant figure in the eradication of the Serpentfok of Ekujae. Armed with the formidable blade Ilthscar, a magical sword of curved bronze, Zelekti led her outnumbered forces to triumph in the Battle of Sekresidia beneath the Ghol-gan city of Gargatar. After decapitating the Serpentfok high priest of Serkisdia, she proudly displayed the skull on her right arm of her throne as her trophy. Zelekti enjoyed a long life, and ruled until the declining years of the Classical period, witnessing firsthand the decay of the Ghol-gan, the empire she had helped build. Many scholars attributed the initial deterioration of Ghol-gan society to its exposure to Serpentfok beliefs and traditions. The Cyclops who ventured into the Darklands, seeking to seize the realm from the scaled monsters, hoped to win favor from their sun and moon gods and illuminate the perpetual darkness below. However, as time passed, Cyclops living in these lightless caverns realized that their celestial deities did not reach them there. Consequently, they embraced the dark ideologies of the conquered Serpentfok. These underground-dwelling Cyclops eventually brought these practices to the surface, where they swiftly spread among the common people and later the nobility of the empire. Ghol-gans began ritual animal sacrifice, practices which gradually transformed into ritual bloodletting and cannibalism. Naturally, such depravity undermined the peace forged between Azlant and the Ghol-gan during the joint wars against the Serpentfok. The human empire began to view the Cyclops as no better than the monstrous creatures lurking beneath the earth. This transition from their sky worship to brutal mass sacrifices marked the shift from Ghol-gan's classical period to its subsequent post-classical era, ultimately leading to its downfall. Despite the efforts of Ghol-gan's wise seer caste to prevent the Empire's descent into brutality, their pleas fell on deaf ears in the face of a violent and growingly savage society. Recognizing the inevitable destruction, the intellectual elite of the Ghol-gan gathered their loyal followers and fled the crumbling empire in search of new lands. These visionary refugees eventually established the distant empire of Coloran, something which I discuss in more detail in my Northeast Avestan deep dive video. The final decline of the Cyclops civilization was swift and evident. Artifacts from Ghol-gan's post-classical period lacked artistry, reflecting a doomed people aware of their impending demise. By the late years of the Age of Legend, the Ghol-gan Empire was already irreversibly corroded, and the fall of the Starstone in -5293 delivered the final blow to an already dying kingdom. The earthquakes caused by the Earthfall ravaged the few remaining Cyclops in the decaying realm of the Ghol-gan, causing much of the nation to crumble into the depths of the Arcadian Ocean. A number of significant Ghol-gan ruins can still be found in the western Mwangi Expanse, however, including the site of the city of Egrexia, which partly collapsed into the Terwa Lake, the Temple of the Moon and Star Watcher Tower, located in the mountains themselves, as well as the ruined Colosseum of Umnexios and the Gutblood Labyrinth in the northern stretch of the Mugumo Plains. Another historically significant Ghol-gan ruin, situated further away from the main part of their civilization, was the site of a massive temple complex located deep in the Kaava Lands, the Temple of Kadodi. The Empire of Azlant was likewise destroyed by the Earthfall cataclysm. In the western Mwangi Expanse, the Azlanti left behind an infamous storehouse of war machines in a cliffside vault known as the Azlant Ridge, a relic of the war with the Serpentfok. The most dangerous of these were the autonomously magically powered iron golems known as the Monoliths, some of which are still active and patrol the southern hill lands to this day. The elves of the Mualijae, however, were faced with a grave choice. Across Golarion, the elves had managed to predict the coming apocalypse, and so most elves all across the New World chose to leave by way of the Elf Gates to their homeland of Severian. However, for the Mualijae, that choice was not so clear. The clerics and wizards of their ancient kingdom used potent divination magic to recognize that the Starstone was not the only thing coming. In the chaos of the devastation, a great and ancient evil would return to the material world, and if it was left unchecked, it was possible the entire world would never recover. This entity they foresaw the coming of was the dragon god Dahak, whom I discuss in more detail in my recent dragon creature feature. It was a difficult decision, but these elves chose to stay behind and defend their lands against the coming darkness. The greatest warriors and wizards of the Mualijae devised a plan to trap the dragon god within the Elfgate network. These brave elves who fought Dahak sacrificed their finest warriors to achieve their aim, preventing him from ravaging the darkened world. Following the cataclysmic event known as the Earthfall, the Mualijae elven people underwent a division. The Ekujae chose to stay behind, assuming the responsibility of protecting the Hunter Gate and guarding against the possible return of Dahak. But not all the Mualijae remained in the western Mwangi region. The elves who would become the Alijae embarked on a mission to purify the corrupted city of Nagisa on the eastern end of the Mwangi jungle, while the Kalajae directed their efforts towards challenging the nation of Usaro in the central Mwangi jungle. Thus each faction pursued its distinct path, with the Ekujae as guardians of the Ayudara, the Alijae as the purifiers of Nagisa, and the Kalajae as the opponents of Usaro. In the age of darkness that followed the Earthfall cataclysm, the elves of all three kindreds did what they could to weather the storm, knowing that in time the clouds would part and the sun would shine through once again. Where possible, they tried to help the primitive human people, but survival was so challenging in those early days that for the most part they just kept to themselves. The Ekujae in particular built the city of Akravel over the Ayudara portal called the Hunter Gate, where they had trapped Dahak. They also constructed a vast temple there dedicated to Ketefis, the elven god of the hunt. Although life in the Age of Darkness was difficult, two peoples, however, were able to thrive in the darkness. They were the orcs and the dwarves. The orcs, like the Serpentfok before them, had lived in Golarion's vast underground realms known as the Darklands. When the dwarves, who lived even deeper underground, began to push upwards, the orcs were driven from them, and they breached the surface. This occurred in roughly minus 4290. Today, the orcs that emerged in Garand are known as the Rain Orcs, or the Matangi in their own language. The Matangi displayed remarkable adaptability and resilience in their new jungle surroundings. They gradually honed their skills in building shelters and hunting local wildlife. Initially, they remained a secluded tribal culture, until they encountered the people of Usaro, who were followers of the demon lord Angazan and the sworn enemies of the Kalajae elves. Engaging in numerous battles against these fanatical servants, the orcs witnessed a horrifying transformation of their own kin into the demon-worshipping Charaka. The desecration of their fallen brethren ignited a deep-seated berserker rage within the Matangi people, forcing them to reluctantly slaughter their transformed kin. United by this tragedy, they rallied together to repel the Gorilla King, the champion of the demon lord. From that point on, they dedicated themselves to hunting down Angazan's cultists wherever they might be found, and any demonic creatures they encountered. Not long after the orcs came to Garand, the dwarves came. As discussed in my Southern Mwangi video and in my Geb video, dwarves established outposts on the eastern Shattered Range, forming the beginnings of the Taralu and the Donguni cultures. They came to the west too, of course, in the vast mountains of the Terwa Uplands, establishing a vast sky citadel there in minus 4372 that would be called Cloudspire. Upon their arrival in the Terwa Uplands, the dwarves discovered the presence of a formidable clan of cloud dragons, who had already claimed the territory as their own. The historical records from that era are scarce, leaving much of the details shrouded in mystery. However, scholars speculate that initial encounters between the dwarves and the dragons were marked by territorial disputes and competition for resources. Certainly, a notable number of the ancient Mbeke relics found in the region are crafted from dragon bone, hinting at the clashes that may have taken place at one time. Over time, however, the confrontations between the dwarves and the cloud dragons transitioned into a state of stalemate. Neither side could gain a decisive advantage, leading to an uneasy truce born out of mutual respect. Gradually, this truce evolved into genuine peace, as both parties recognized the futility of continued conflict. Finally, the dwarves and the cloud dragons embraced a spirit of cooperation, forging a partnership that allowed for the integration of their respective cultures and societies. The dwarves may not have been the only population in the region to develop friendly relations with dragons in the Mwangi Expanse during the Age of Darkness. Around this time, a likely human civilization emerged on the banks of the Terwa Lake, their capital city being called Bloodsalt, named for the region's red, iron-rich silt. Not much is known about this group today, however, as they were wiped out by some unknown event. A significant portion of the ruins of Bloodsalt remain concealed under a heavy layer of the red silt. Previous archaeological efforts, though, have unearthed depictions portraying individuals with dragon-like wings soaring through the sky, which is why many today think the people that once lived in Bloodsalt may have had draconic lineages, and this has bestowed the ruins with the moniker the City of the Dragon Speakers. Also during the Age of Darkness, a powerful Asura named Parveen came to Golarion. Asuras are powerful entities native to the plane of Hell, whose origins date back to an unknown divine misdeed. Parveen came seeking enlightenment through meditation on Ghol-gan's secrets, and she claimed the secret temple city of Kadodi for herself. During her millennium of rule in the central Kaava Lands, lesser Asuras flocked to her banner, firmly establishing the central jungle of the Kaava Lands as a violent and dangerous place for any good-intentioned folk. From here, the rest of the region's history throughout the Ages of Darkness and Anguish have already been thoroughly described in my Southern Mwangi video, but to quickly recap the highlights, the first post-cataclysm human civilization to emerge was the Jiska Imperium in -4120. This was followed in -3502 by Old Mage Jatembe founding the city-state of Nantambu and the Magambaya Academy. One of the legendary deeds performed by Old Mage Jatembe and his 10 disciples occurred in the Kaava Lands sometime just prior to the end of the Age of Anguish. Jatembe and his disciples fought the Asura Parveen at her temple city in Kadodi. Jatembe and his disciples defeated Parveen, and rather than slay her and risk her reincarnating elsewhere on Golarion, they bound her soul within her profaned temple. There she has remained to the present day, although over time the wards they placed around her have started to weaken. In -3470, the Empire of Assyrian ushered in the end of the Age of Anguish and the beginning of the Age of Destiny. In -3250, the 5 great city-states of Thuvia united and formed the Tekratanen League. Finally, in -2556, the Black Heron, one of the most powerful of Old Mage Jatembe's living disciples, would unite the Shori tribes in the central Mwangi Expanse, and over the course of the next few hundred years, the Shori Empire and their fantastical flying cities would become the ruling power all over the greater Mwangi Expanse. As recounted in my Southern Mwangi video, the Shori Empire would last for just over 2,000 years, coming to an end in the year -507, when the last of its flying cities, a place called Uldavai, crashed into the Shattered Range. After the fall of the Shori Empire, it would be a long time before any new significant human city-states or kingdoms would begin to emerge on the western coast of Garand. However, just because the people in this period didn't establish large cities, or keep terribly accurate historical records, didn't mean that humanity was dormant at the time. It just meant that the humans of the region were leading simpler semi-nomadic lives. The major human tribes of the region consisted of the Bonuat peoples, who lived along the coastlines and along the rivers, the Zenge people, who lived primarily in the Mugumo Plains, and the Mbeke people that could be found in the more treacherous areas of the region, such as the interior of the Kaava Lands, the northern reaches of the Bandu Hills, and the forested foothills of the Terwa Uplands. These various tribes would establish a number of small settlements, some of which still exist today, and some of which have disappeared over time. The Bonuat tribe in particular would establish the village of Kutu south of the Terwa Lake. They would also build a small village at the mouth of the Vanji River that would one day evolve into the modern city-state of Bloodcove. Even further along the coastline, they established the city of Boali. Meanwhile, in the interior of the Kaava Lands, a Mbeke tribe would establish the city of Mbeke in the Kaava Lands. Non-humans also expanded and established small settlements in the early middle years of the Age of Enthronement. The Haza halflings settled in the Kaava Lands and developed trade relations with both the Mbeke and the Boali. The Greepli established the city of Krahirik in the eastern Kaava Lands. In the north, an alliance of various lizardfolk tribes established a semi-permanent settlement just above the Terwa Falls that spilled into the Terwa Lake. This location was to serve as a sacred breeding ground where the various Iruxi people could come together, compete, hold religious festivals, and mate to keep the tribal communities diverse and healthy. Starting in the early 2000s, the Taldan Empire began exploring increasingly remote lands in an effort to access resources that might allow them to better compete with their great eastern rival, the Padishah Empire of Kalesh. In 2203, a group of explorers returned to Taldor, reporting that they had discovered a fountain of youth somewhere in the Mwangi Expanse, protected by a large talking tree. But they had been drugged and set loose in the jungle and only survived due to their wit and skill. This was not quite accurate, of course, but these explorers had discovered the secret city of Osibu, as recounted in more detail in my Southern Mwangi video, and this story fueled increasing exploration of the region. Between 2203 and 2500 or so, various Taldan exploratory vessels would start to chart the western coastline of Garand, and in particular the vast archipelago known as the Shackles, which they would start to settle. In 2557, an astronomer and philosopher named Saok, accompanied by a devoted group of followers, traversed the treacherous Napsoon Mountains, fleeing the Oath Wars of Rahadum, and ventured into the vast and unexplored southern tropics. In this new territory, his people found the freedom to practice their own religious beliefs. They established a thriving city named Hirantam. As the initial expeditionary group settled and prospered, an increasing number of followers from the northern regions joined them. These expatriates rejected the laws of man and embraced Saok's new paradigm. Initially, this set of laws declared that all citizens of his land were entitled to worship as they saw fit, as long as their worship contributed to the common good. Saok's own tendency towards astrological spiritualism was embraced by many citizens of the land and incorporated into whatever belief systems they had brought with them when they settled there. By the year 2800, Hirantam had become the capital city of a flourishing nation named Lirgen, a united land with provincial governors collectively known as the Saok Brethren, each of which was generally inclined towards rulership through the application of enlightened philosophy and astrology. At the height of its prosperity, Lirgen became known as the Land of Fortune. It flourished not only due to its mastery of divination and the abundance of available resources, but also owing to the hard work of farmers and herders in the southern marshes and fields, who provided the majority of the nation's food. This sizable underclass of farmers and herders in the south of the country were deprived of the privileges and rights bestowed upon the Saok Brethren and the middle class, and consequently the underclass grew resentful towards their stargazing counterparts. Meanwhile, further south, by the turn of the 26th century, the residents of Boali on the Bay of Senghor discovered Kadodi during their expansionist phase, damaging the seals by scavenging stone to build their own dwellings and removing artifacts to enrich themselves. From her prison, Parveen had not been idle, sending portents and dreams into the minds of those receptive to such foulness. The corruption of the Boali people had begun. They were not the only victims of the Bound Azura's corrupting influence. In the Kaava rainforest, one of Parveen's servants had come to rule over the Haza halflings, turning them to worship of the Azura Ranas, the hellish demigods of their kind. In late 2602, a group of merchant explorers hailing from Arcadia embarked on a brave voyage eastwards. Using the shattered islands left from the old continent of Azlanti as stopping points in their journey to discover what lands lay to the east of the vast ocean. In early 2603, they discovered the city of Boali on the western shore of the Kaava Lands. Despite Parveen's corrupting influence on its people, the citizens of Boali warmly welcomed these travelers, called the Kaldaru. The Boalites generously offered the newcomers land, and over the next 10 years, the Kaldaru established the city of Senghor. The Boalites of this time had observably unusual demographics, having many more older people than younger people, something which they explained to the Kaldaru was due to a mysterious plague. They therefore not only welcomed the Kaldarus, but also sought to strengthen their population by offering up their citizens of reproductive age to enter into marriage alliances with the settling Kaldaru. Recognizing the opportunity to expand their extensive trade network, the Kaldaru explorers happily agreed to these proposed marriage alliances. However, over the course of several decades, the Kaldaru observed that young individuals would periodically vanish before the summer solstice and lunar eclipses. Eventually, the newly settled residents of Senghor uncovered the horrifying truth. that the powerful cultists of Boali were sacrificing their youth to Parveen and the dark gods she served, all in an effort to weaken the binds that held her there. In response to this revelation, in 2618, the Kaldaru assaulted the city of Boali, and after winning the siege, they razed the whole city to the ground, bringing the cultists and their collaborators to justice, while rescuing those who were destined to be sacrificed. Despite the deceitful nature of the Boalites, the Senghorites couldn't escape the guilt of violating the hospitality they had initially been shown. Therefore, they welcomed many Boali children into their community, but would not tell them the truth of what had happened to their families. Thus, the true facts surrounding these events slowly faded into legend, and the Senghorites, even if they don't truly know the truth of this matter, still choose to avoid discussing the topic of Boali today. This is a great shame in a way, as though the Boalite civilization was destroyed, the source of their corruption, the Azura cults of the Kaava Lands, was not. Nevertheless, a small group within Senghor sworn to the highest secrecy is entrusted with the responsibility of safekeeping the true record of these events, and in guarding against any potential resurgence of the cult. This secret cabal diligently upholds their duties to this day, ensuring the safety and well-being of the city. Although the Boalites were destroyed, Parveen and her power would continue to grow. In the deep jungle settlements of Mbeke, a curse befell its citizens, and they were transformed into leopards. Whatever power did this to them had a dark sense of humor, for the leopard was an animal that the tribe that dwelled there had long considered sacred. It is said that in the Kaava Land some of its leopards are still awakened animals to this day, possessing the ability to speak and the knowledge of forgotten lore and the secret history of the Mbeke tribe. Meanwhile, their old city fell into the hands of Parveen's corrupted halfling tribe, the Haza halflings, and they still use this ancient city as a base of operations to continue to carry out their dark agendas to this day. In 2653, a Taldan trade syndicate, a precursor to that which would eventually become the notorious and powerful Aspis Consortium, reached the mouth of the Vanji River. In exchange for offers of trade and technology, the traders and merchants settled into the small Bonuat village there, transforming the meager Mwangi settlement into a vast regional trade hub. The northern merchants named the city Bloodcove, for the prominent red color of its waters, thanks to the red silt churned up by the Vanji River. Meanwhile, back north, on the momentous occasion of Lirgan's 700th anniversary, in the year 3257, the laboring underclass chose to commemorate this event by casting aside their tools and taking up arms. United in their cause, they embarked on a march directly towards the capital of Hirantem. The resulting conflict, later known as the Yamasan Uprising, unfolded swiftly, lasting less than a year. Throughout the turmoil, the Sauk brethren, deeply connected to the celestial realm, sought guidance by dedicating most of their time to consulting the stars above. Their astrological divination was no match for the determination of the angry United Southerners, though. By the culmination of the strife, the rebels emerged victorious, securing their freedom from the oppression they had long endured. Subsequently, they chose to secede from Lirgan, establishing their independent nation-state to the south of the Frogmarch River. The liberated swamplands were given the name Yamasa, signifying the dawn of a new era for its resilient inhabitants. Indeed, once freed from the yoke of the Lirgeni, the Yamasans' bountiful harvest was traded with the northern settlers in the Shackles, with the Mbeke dwarves of the Terwa Uplands, and with the growing trade hub of Bloodcove further south. Without the tight Lirgeni gubernatorial controls, Yamasa began to grow wealthy on their plentiful agrarian trade. Speaking of the dwarves, in 3841, the dwarf High King Nekobe of Cloudspire lost his only son to illness. This caused him to descend into a violent paranoia, which in turn led the Mbeke dwarf civilization into a civil war called the War of Split Hearts. The war would last for 3 years, ending in 3844, with most of the Mbeke aristocracy dying in the process. The dwarves established a new constitution, with the head of state being elected rather than having hereditary right to rule. In 4081, the Taldor-Cheliac split occurred. All of the Taldan interests in the land became immediately independent, and in the city of Bloodcove in particular, the trade syndicate known as the Aspis Consortium went from being one of the leading mercantile factions in the city to being the dominant political faction as well. This trade consortium came to the conclusion that Bloodcove would be best served by being a completely independent city-state, and they helped establish the ruling position in the town, which they gave the lofty title of the Grand Admiralty of the Fever Sea. perhaps in the hopes that in so doing, Bloodcove might become the capital city of a new nation based around the Fever Seas. That of course did not happen. Bloodcove became an independent city-state, but the rest of the Shackles became a lawless place, the Avestinian settlers there turning to piracy, with many individual free captains carving out little fiefdoms for themselves in the chaotic archipelago. When Cheliax began its own imperialist expansion in the years following the split, the Shackles were considered so dangerous that they bypassed the region altogether, and instead sailed even further south to colonize, in 4138, the nation of Sargava, just south of the Kaava Lands. In the 4100s, as Chelish colonialism gave Imperial Cheliax increased reach in the lands south of Bloodcove, and as the pirates of the Shackles were getting increasingly organized as well, Bloodcove began to engage in some expansion of its own. The Grand Admiralty of Bloodcove established 2 additional cities further upriver: Free Station, located about 100 miles upstream, and Whitebridge Station, located about 200 miles upstream. Whitebridge Station in particular was located very close to the significant Ekujae city of Akravel. At Whitebridge Station, the consortium constructed a 200-foot-long fortified bridge to cross the river, the only safe passage across the wide crocodile-filled river in the Mugumo Plains. They also developed massive wheelboats to ferry large amounts of goods up and down the Vanji River. The wheelboats were powered by rare magical devices called the Protean engines. The Protean engines were invented by a Chelish inventor named Arthok Sandalspit on behalf of the consortium. He was only able to build a handful of engines before he died in a mysterious fire, which also consumed all of his notes. So far, no one has been able to duplicate his work, so the consortium must carefully guard the few remaining wheelboats that still operate on the river. The Grand Admiralty of Bloodcove wasn't the only political entity to push inwards into Western Garand from the coast. The pirates of the Shackles established their most inland settlement of Neruma in this time as well, finding that above the falls it was a large, flat area with a number of elegantly erected cairns and small cliffside hollows. By the time they realized the site at which they had built their new city was in fact the sacred mating grounds of the nearby Iruxi tribes, they were unwilling to move. As a result, Neruma continues to be periodically raided by outraged Iruxi who demand their holy site be returned to them. In 4606, Aradin abruptly died on the eve of the night he was prophesied to return to Golarion and usher in a golden age for Taldor or Cheliax, depending on who one might ask. More importantly for this region, though, on the night of his death, the Eye of Abendego, a vast whirlpool and massive permanent storm, manifested in the waters west of Lirgan and Yamasa, catching both nations off guard and unprepared for the ensuing catastrophe. Even though the wisest among the Saok brethren had written that they had sensed an impending calamity, the stars they had relied upon for guidance were enigmatic, failing to provide clear answers. Lirgan suffered a harrowing fate, with nearly half of its territory succumbing to the depths of the Acadian Ocean within a matter of weeks. The remainder was swiftly devastated, either succumbing to devastating floods or being torn apart by the ferocious hurricane winds. While a fraction of the Saok brethren chose to remain behind, seeking solace in the stars and attempting to comprehend the magnitude of the catastrophe, the majority fled. Those who did remain and came close to grasping their meaning suffered irreversible damage to their sanity, with a significant portion of the group resorting to ritual suicide in the year 4615. Similarly, Yamasa was ravaged by the cataclysm, witnessing the tragic loss of over 90% of its population. Many perished in the immediate aftermath of the Eye, while others succumbed to disease and starvation in the subsequent weeks. The surviving remnants of the population fled the region, seeking refuge elsewhere. Today, this region is known as the Sodden Lands, and it's a region I will delve into in more detail in a future deep dive video. The sudden appearance of the vast storm known as the Eye of Abendego greatly reduced the trade between the Chelish colony of Sargava and the mainland of Cheliax, and only a year after the great storm opened up, the pirates of the Shackles realized that to survive, they would need to plunder more than just Chelish vessels. In 4607, the pirates began preying on Mbeke dwarf ships as well, something which the pirates had previously steered clear of since the dwarves lived perilously close to their lands. The Mbeke retaliated in force, resulting in the first of the Corsair Wars, which ran from 4607 to 4611. The war ended with a number of pirates agreeing to leave Mbeke vessels alone, in exchange for the Mbeke offering some reparations for damage inflicted on the large pirate-free city of Port Peril. By the end of the First Corsair War, the Mbeke dwarves strengthened and secured their northernmost city, the port of Clereng. In 4639, the Chelish Civil War ended, and the winner was the infernal House of Thrun, who made worship of the Dark Lord Asmodeus the state religion. Unsurprisingly, the colonial nation of Sargava broke with Thrun-ruled Cheliax. See my Vidrian deep dive video for more details on this. Once Cheliax became an Asmodean empire, with the Dark Lord's principles of strength through tyranny, they became increasingly reliant on slave labor in their recovery from the costly civil war. The unscrupulous Aspis Consortium, the backers of the Grand Admiralty of Bloodcove, were more than happy to provide such, and increase their wealth and power. Aspis slavers were particularly active in and around Whitebridge Station and the Mugumo Plains, where they hunted the region for Zenge nomads and Ekujae hunters for sale to slave masters in infernal Cheliax. In 4674, partly due to the Corsair Wars, and partly due to the shifting relationship the pirates were having with Sargava in the south, the most powerful free captains of the Shackles realized they would need some semblance of a real government, and they formed a loose alliance, called the Free Captains' Council. Collectively, the Free Captains' Council named one among their number to be considered the head of the Pirate Council, a position titled the Hurricane King, which they gave to an impressive young pirate lord with a necromantically enchanted skeletal hand named Kurdak Bonefist. In 4679, the Grand Admiralty of Bloodcove continued its interior expansion, establishing the settlement of Darkreach along the southern arm of the Vangi River known as the Little Vangi. It was intended to serve as a trading post between the miners of the Bandu Hills and the markets of Bloodcove, without requiring the additional taxation from passing through Sargava. Meanwhile, in the Fever Sea, Mbeke vessels continued to experience plundering at the hands of disobedient pirates. This kicked off the Second Corsair War, which lasted from 4695 to 4699. In 4696, a titanic beast known as a frog-hemoth came out of the Kaava jungle and attacked the city of Bloodcove, killing 204 victims over the span of an exceptionally hot summer. The monster was eventually slain in a tumultuous battle with over a dozen heroes. This tragedy further cemented Bloodcove's reputation as one of the more dangerous cities in western Garand. In 4708, the Ekujae Elves finally organized themselves against the Aspis slavers of Whitebridge Station. In a single day, the Ekujae descended upon that city and massacred all of its citizens. The message was clear: no more slave hunting in the Mugumo Plains. Not long after Bloodcove lost Whitebridge Station to the Ekujae Elves, it also lost the settlement of Darkreach, razed to the ground by forces unknown. The people vanished, and all that was left of the buildings was the charred outline of the foundations. Some supernatural force appears to have been at work here, since no natural fire cuts off buildings smoothly at ground level and leaves behind no ash. Regardless of what caused this, with the loss of both Whitebridge and Darkreach, Bloodcove lost substantial influence in the Mwangi interior, but they would continue to search inland for anything that might give them a commercial advantage, sometimes to devastating effect. In 4710, the events of the Serpent Skull adventure path took place in Sargava and in the central Mwangi Expanse. The Gorilla King was slain by adventurers, ending millennia of his dark rule in the central Mwangi jungle. In 4712, the events of the Skull and Shackles adventure path took place in the Shackles. A Chelish armada was defeated by a new member of the Free Captains' Council. The Hurricane King Kurdak Bonefist was slain. The half-elven free captain Tessa Fairwind was named as his replacement. In 4715, the colonized people of Sargava overthrew the oppressive colonial government and became the liberated nation of Vidrian. Many former Sargavan colonialists fled to Bloodcove to make their fortune there instead. In 4718, the Pathfinder Society adventure module, the Bloodcove Blockade, took place. This adventure was a pivotal point in a sequence of linked stories pertaining to the Kaava Lands. The Pathfinder Society became aware that the Aspis Consortium in Bloodcove had discovered the Ghol-gan Temple of Kadodi. Fola Baron, an envoy of the Ekujae communities in the Mugumo Plains, and her Ekujae intelligence network confirmed that the Aspis Consortium's mining operation were actively dismantling the Kadodi temple complex and threatening to free Parveen, the Elder Azura that old mage Jatembe and his disciples had bound there almost 8 millennia ago. They also learned that for many years, the Griepli of Krihirik had for decades been the unsung heroes of this part of the world, as they were using their ancient arts of magical preservation to strengthen those protective wards. Yet all their work would be in vain if the consortium continued operations. The Pathfinder Society had no choice but to put in place a massive blockade around Bloodcove. Before long, Aspis ships began struggling to make landfall in the city, and Pathfinder allies reported that traffic to the Kadodi operation in the Kaava Lands quickly diminished in the face of the frequent raids. With the supply lines compromised, Fola Baron and her Ekujae allies began planning ways to further cripple the excavation projects before it undermined Parveen's prison completely. Of course, all of that was a holding action. In a subsequent Society adventure titled the Ghol-gan Heresy, a group of heroes from the Pathfinder Society, allied with both Fola's Ekujae warriors and the Greepli of Krihirik, entered the Temple of Kadodi directly. They dismantled the consortium operations and confronted the bound and weakened Parveen herself. However, that adventure had two possible endings, one in which Parveen was destroyed outright, but more likely is that they began to repair the ancient seals, and that they struck a bargain with another faction to fund the Greepli Temple Wardens and grant them additional protection in Krihirik and elsewhere. If this is the case, then Parveen may still prove to be a threat to the region in the future. Moving between editions, 4 years after Vidric independence, in 4719, the Pirates of the Shackles resumed their depredations on the Mbeke shipping. Perhaps because the lost income of no longer having a standing extortion racket with Sargava was really hurting them. Thus began the Third and current Corsair War. The Third Corsair War is shaping up to be the bloodiest yet, and support is growing among Mbekes to end the pirate threat once and for all, no matter the cost. This brings us to today. The Third Corsair War is still going on in the Terwa Uplands and the Shackles. The Ekujae Elves continue to patrol the Mugumo Plains to make sure no foolish slavers dare to come into their territories again. The capitalistic city of Bloodcove is increasingly chaotic and unruly, but its regional power and influence continue to grow in spite of this. The Kaldaru people of Senghor are now well and truly settled in their new homeland on the eastern fringes of the Kaava Lands, with an elite few continuing to keep a vigilant eye out for the dark forces of the Kaava Lands that corrupted their Bawali neighbors. Let's take a deeper look at the three big geographical regions now, starting with the Terwa Uplands. The Terwa Uplands is a rugged peninsula extending into the ocean just south of the Eye of Abendego, serving as the traditional boundary between Garin to the east and the Shackles Islands to the west. These uplands mainly consist of low, densely forested mountains ranging from 2,000 to 5,000 feet above sea level, with occasional peaks reaching heights of 8,000 or 9,000 feet. The mountains are home to a unique type of forest known as the cloud forest. In this unique woodland, rainfall is infrequent, and instead moisture is returned to the land through constant layers of mists and fogs. Plants and animals in this region rely on condensation for water, and the sun is often obscured by the perpetual haze. The dominant vegetation comprises sturdy short trees with twisted trunks, covered by a thick layer of moss. The animal life is relatively smaller compared to the Mwangi jungle to the east, featuring a variety of monkeys, wild pigs, leopards, and amphibians, including a rare breed of colorful poisoned newt. The most populous inhabitants of this area are the Mbeke dwarves, an urbanized and cosmopolitan society that primarily resides in the high mountains above the forests. The Mbekes are known for possessing one of the original sky citadels called Cloudspire, and they have expanded their settlements to other towns and cities throughout the uplands. These towns are often fortified with robust stone walls and constructed partially within the mountains. The Mbekes cultivate tubers and mushrooms in the forest and engage in mining activities to extract copper and gold, which they craft into exquisite objects for trade. The uplands are also home to a significant population of whimsical and free-spirited cloud dragons. Cloud dragons are considered a type of primal dragon, which means they are dragons that do not originate in Galarian, but rather in the elemental plane of air. Each of these individual dragons typically selects a specific valley as its territory, often nesting in the tallest trees or mountain pools. These dragons are staunch allies and friends of the dwarves, and most Mbekes can identify their local dragons by name. Important locations in the Terwa Uplands. The Mbeke Sky Citadel of Cloudspire is the most important location in the region, being the heart of it and the capital city of the Mbeke dwarves. However, I'll dive deeper into the Mbeke and their capital in my look at the major polities of the western Mwangi Expanse. Cloreng. Another major Mbeke settlement is located just east of the Shackles, situated close to the southeastern border of the Sodden Lands. Cloreng stands as the second largest city of the Mbeke dwarves. It serves as a bustling trading port on the upper edge of the Terwa Uplands. The docks of Cloreng attract goods from countless nations and peoples from diverse lands, although its majority population naturally remains dwarven. While the port occasionally faces threats from pirates, the formidable sea chain, the presence of a local friendly cloud dragon named Corsairasix, and the warriors under the command of King Thabsing have successfully repelled any attacks thus far. The city's prosperity mainly derives from trade and shipbuilding, and the dwarves' construction of a deep artificial harbour plays a vital role in sustaining Cloreng's economy. To safeguard the harbour, an extensive sea chain has been erected. Utilizing ancient machinery, the sea chain can be raised to impede the passage of ships when necessary. Each link of the sea chain is as large as a bull, and is sponsored by various Mbeke fellowships or local merchant captains. These sponsors bear the cost of upkeep and commission local engravers to embellish their respective links. Notably, the dragon Corsairasix has claimed 7 links for himself, each of which is intricately engraved to resemble dragons biting their own tails in his honor. Neruma. Neruma, although it sits in the Terwa Uplands and not on the western coast, is the sole inland settlement of the Shackles. It is situated on a wide, flat plateau that sits on the lip of the caldera of a long-dormant volcano, overlooking a stunning waterfall that falls into the Terwa Lake below. It stands as a remote trading hub, currently under the unyielding authority of Governor Kusota Shald, a battle-hardened half-orc and former privateer. She utilizes the profits from the inland trade to strengthen her alliance with the Free Captain's Council and the Hurricane Queen in Port Peril. As long as Governor Shald ensures a steady flow of wealth into the Council's coffers, her trading post remains safeguarded, with the Council providing her with a contingent of cutthroat mercenaries in exchange, known as the Steel Cordage. The mercenaries of the Steel Cordage are kept busy, too, as increasingly fierce assaults from the native Iruxi routinely attack the town. Unbeknownst to Neruma's original founders, the settlement was constructed upon sacred lizardfolk breeding grounds, leading to a vehement struggle by the dispossessed warriors to reclaim their ancestral land. These lizardfolk warriors fight with unwavering determination to regain what was taken from them, placing significant pressure on Shald and the Steel Cordage Mercenary Company to keep the settlement safe and secure. So far, Governor Shald has shown no signs of even entertaining the possibility of permitting the Iruxi returned access to their ancestral site. The Terwa Lake. Located in the northeastern portion of the uplands, at the northern edge of the Mugumo Plains, Terwa Lake is surrounded by numerous ruined cities. The lake is fed by runoff from the Mbeke River, which cascades into the lake from a high waterfall. The water pools in the caldera of a dormant volcano to form the lake, and then empties into the Terwa River, which flows out into one of the main wet deltas of the Sodden Lands. Within the cold waters of the Terwa Lake, volcanic gases seep and remain dormant until seismic activity triggers their release in the form of a lethal cloud. This dense and invisible gas, commonly known as dead man's breath by the locals, lingers for days, suffocating any life within miles of its reach. While it is technically possible for individuals to navigate this area while keeping their heads above the gas, a sudden gust of wind can swiftly lead to a silent and deadly encounter. The indigenous people of the Mwangi Expanse take precautions when visiting the lake by wearing silver charms that tarnish upon exposure to the poisonous gas. The ruins of Egrexia. Along the western shores of Terwa Lake lies the partially sunken city of Egrexia, once a thriving Ghol-gan settlement. Due to the poisonous air that surrounds the lake, exploring Egrexia's surface settlements is difficult, but the rest of the city is even harder to access. The silt-laden waters of the Terwa Lake engulf most of the city's structure, with only the tallest buildings protruding above the murky surface, creating hiding spots for dangerous predators. The treacherous terrain all along the shoreline of Egrexia resembles red quicksand, making movement difficult and escape hazardous. The depths of the Terwa Lake itself contain a concentrated accumulation of volcanic gas, making survival beneath the waters nearly impossible for living creatures. However, the ruins are still not devoid of life. In some parts of the ruins, tribes of boggards, drakes, were-crocodiles, and other predators make their dwellings, making exploration of the ruins even more dangerous. Egrexia garners interest primarily due to legends claiming that the free captains of the Shackles frequently buried their treasures along the shores of the Terwa Lake. One particularly infamous tale revolves around Basilisk Adam, a renowned free captain who buried a king's ransom somewhere in Egrexia. Researchers interested in unraveling the mysteries of the Ghol-gan civilization and its ultimate downfall also find Egrexia compelling. Additionally, certain merchants hope to sell authentic artifacts from Ghol-gan's golden age, and the ruins here still house numerous exquisite relics, intricately detailed and representative of that era. The ruins of Bloodsalt. Not as ancient as Egrexia, but equally mysterious, is the abandoned city of a later unnamed civilization. Located on the eastern edge of the Terwa Lake, the ruined city of Bloodsalt derives its name from the region's crimson, iron-rich silt, which gives the ground and water an unsettling resemblance to fresh blood. While much of the city lays buried beneath a layer of thick silt, previous excavations have uncovered depictions of individuals with dragon-like wings soaring through the sky. These images have led to the ruins being dubbed the City of the Dragon Speakers. The Temple of the Ravenous Moon. Another Ghol-gani ruin lying deep in the Terwa Mountains. Originally known as the Temple of the Moon, this ziggurat was constructed by the ancient Ghol-gan civilization during the Classical period. It served as a place of moon worship, and as a site for bestowing blessings upon pregnant Cyclops women and newlywed couples. However, during the post-classical era, when the Cyclops turned to worship of demons and darker extraterrestrial gods, the once serene sanctuary gave way to barbaric depictions, where the blood of their live sacrifices flowed down the ziggurat steps, staining its white surface and creating distinctive crimson veins. Legends surrounding the temple claim that its extensive catacombs hold an entrance to the underground Cyclops kingdom of Reguare, along with the location of a monstrous alien behemoth of unimaginable ferocity. This creature is said to be bound within a colossal chamber by 88 chains crafted from mage-forged adamantine. If the tales hold any truth, this otherworldly monster originates from a realm beyond the stars. Exploration of the temple has thus far proved impossible, as the place has been settled by a violent cannibalistic people called the Kurus, who have red eyes and file their teeth down into sharp, jagged fangs. Star Watcher Tower. Another Ghol-gan structure built during the Classical period, like the Temple of the Moon, Star Watcher Tower was a religious site and a celestial observatory. However, during the war with the Serpentfok, the ancient observatory, because of its thick walls and magical iron doors, was repurposed as a prison to house some of the Serpentfok's most dangerous demonic allies. Over the years, the powerful fiends bound within have begun to crack the prison walls deep within the observatory, using their magic to activate the Ivory Beacon, a powerful signal light situated at the top of the observatory. Now its eerie emanations have drawn explorers to it, who in turn have become corrupted by the malignant forces of the fiends trapped within. Azlanti Ridge. A few miles south of Star Watcher Tower was a place where the Ghol-gan's Azlanti allies in their war against the Serpentfok set up a storehouse for war machines, many of which were vast iron golems known as monoliths, which were actively used to capture and bind the fiends, and forcibly drag them to Star Watcher Tower for imprisonment in the vaults below the observatory. Some of the ancient magic that animated these antiquated constructs of war are still functioning. Both Azlanti Ridge and Star Watcher Tower are featured in the Pathfinder Society adventure Beyond Azlanti Ridge. Imnuxios. Though this expansive swath of rocky plains now appears to be little more than a sprawling badlands, the fields of Imnuxios were once home to the most brutal pit-fighting competitions in all the Ghol-gan Empire, where Cyclops gladiators battled against captured monsters and other slaves to exhibit their prowess or win their freedom. Ruins of a massive colosseum in which these brawlers fought still stands in chunks throughout the field. At sunset, it is said that the long-dead champions of the Ghol-gan rise once more as ghosts to do combat with one another in the night. And should any mortals dally too long in the cursed region, they too might get drawn into the arena to clash with undead giants, wretched aberrations, and the shambling bones of reanimated beasts. Let's shift now to a new geographical region in the western Mwangi Expanse and look at the Mugumo Plains. Spanning between the dense Mwangi jungle and the wet Kaava Lands, the Mugumo Plains is a vast savanna, renowned for its fertility, making it one of the most productive farmlands within the Mwangi Expanse. It stretches from the Terwa Lake in the north to the Bandu Hills in the south, and its native people are Zenge savanna nomads and Ekujae elven hunters. The largest and most influential city in the region is the city of Bloodcove, which stands out for its thriving taro crops, flourishing under the nurturing influence of the region's abundant rainfall. In the main stretch of the plains, amidst the remains of long-forgotten structures left behind by dead civilizations of the ancient world, herds of majestic gazelles gracefully traverse the plains, seeking shelter and respite from the scorching sun within the dilapidated edifices of the past. Beneath the protective canopy of the large and abundant Mugumo fig trees, animals gather, momentarily disregarding the natural order of predator and prey, seeking solace from the relentless afternoon heat. Of the Zenge savanna nomads who dwell in this region, perhaps the most famous are the Kuta lion riders, a tribe whose bond to their spirit animals is so strong that they're able to ride lions into combat, fiercely defending their people from outsiders or other tribal rivals. Another famous tribe are the Warabutu tribe, who have taken the hyena for their symbol, and whose tribe contains a large number of gnolls as well. Important locations in the Mugumo Plains. Although Bloodcove is considered a part of this region, I'll take a deeper look at this city later in the video. Similarly, Akravel, the Ekujae capital, sits in the eastern boundary of the region, but I'll skip over this as well, as we'll talk about that in more detail later too. Q2. Situated just south of Terwa Lake, at the end of a small tributary of the vast Mwangi River, Q2 is a quaint Bonawat village with a population of approximately 200 inhabitants, which sounds small but is actually a significant population among villages of its kind in the region. Certainly it is one of the most culturally influential independent Mwangi villages. It remains completely politically separate from the city-state of Bloodcove, although due to its proximity it does feel the influence of the great city keenly. Though it began as a Bonawat village, it now houses a very large number of Mbeke dwarves, and a few individuals of other diverse lineages as well. Fishing forms the primary livelihood for the locals, sustaining their daily needs. However, the true prosperity of the community stems from their exceptional boat-building skills. Through the fusion of Bonawat traditions and Mbeke ingenuity, Q2 has gained a reputation for crafting and trading some of the most coveted watercraft in the entire region. Moreover, Q2 has become a fertile ground for nurturing talented artisans. Many aspiring craftsmen from the village embark on journeys abroad to refine their skills, honing their artistic prowess in distant lands. Nevertheless, they never forget their roots, and generously send back gifts and support their beloved hometown. In their later years, these accomplished artisans often return to Q2, accompanied by their own families, to share the fruits of their labor and continue to contribute to the village's cultural heritage. Calistria's Grin and the Gutblood Labyrinth. Located just southwest of Q2, stretching from the foothills of the Terwa Uplands to Q2's branch of the Mwangi, lies an abrupt and treacherous fissure that fractures the landscape, plunging deep into the earth. Born during the cataclysmic Earthfall event, the fissure's sheer drop poses a constant threat to unwary travelers, earning it the local moniker of Calistria's Grin. Venturing into the depths of the precipitous chasm, intrepid spelunkers initially encountered little of significance for the first few hundred feet. However, as they ventured further into the darkness, where daylight struggled to penetrate, a series of disjointed caverns dotted the cliffsides. These underground tunnels wound and twisted for miles, creating a complex and interwoven network of caves. These are the Ghol-gan ruins known as the Gutblood Labyrinth, another deep underground kingdom constructed in the post-classical period with a historical and perhaps physical connection to the sleepless realm of Raguare. Evidence also indicates that the ancient Ghol-gan deliberately sealed off all passages leading to this subterranean maze. The reasons behind their actions remain shrouded in mystery, but the unsettling vanishing of explorers serves as a chilling reminder of the labyrinth's many perils. The Mwangi River. The Mwangi River is the biggest river in the western Mwangi region. It neatly bisects the Mugumo Plains, and it's so wide that it's difficult to cross even in its most placid areas. Also because those areas tend to be the homes of crocodiles and equally dangerous and aggressive hippopotami. One of the few places where there is a safe crossing is at the vast bridge of Whitebridge Station. Nomads still make use of the bridge today, even though the town has long since been abandoned. The Mwangi River is sourced by overflow water from Lake Okota, which sits at the center of the Mwangi Expanse and collects all the runoff water from the Barrier Mountains and the Shattered Range. The Mwangi then grows increasingly wide and impressive as its currents flow westwards towards the Fever Sea. In the jungle it passes the famous city of Nantambu, before continuing towards Bloodcove's various outposts and Bloodcove itself. On the banks of the Mugumo, it picks up the red silt that makes the region famous, turning the waters red like the color of blood. At Bloodcove, the Mwangi empties out into the sea in a wide, muddy red delta that gives the cove its name. The wreck of the Lady Fortune. As mentioned in my history section, the Aspis Consortium and her allies developed massive stern-wheeler paddle boats, also known as wheelboats, to ferry large goods between Bloodcove and its vassal cities. These massive boats operated up and down the Mwangi River in the Mwangi Expanse. However, they were powered by a rare and magical protean engine, whose manufacture was a secret lost to time. Today, only a handful of these 100-year-old paddle boats are still in service, carefully maintained by the Consortium. One of these paddle boats, the Lady Fortune, was wrecked along the river, apparently as a result of an engine exploding. The investigation of the Lady Fortune is played out in the Pathfinder Society adventure titled River into Darkness. Free Station. Free Station was the first vassal city established by the Grand Admiralty of Bloodcove. It sits at a critical junction of the Vangi River, where the Vangi and the Little Vangi flow together. With the destruction of both Whitebridge Station and Darkreach Station, Free Station remains Bloodcove's greatest inland settlement, so today it is heavily reinforced, with soldiers from the capital to ensure it does not fall to Elves or other enemies of Bloodcove or the Consortium. Whitebridge Station. Whitebridge was once the most impressive of Bloodcove's inland outposts. It was located roughly 200 miles upriver from Bloodcove, and the structure which gave the settlement its name was a 200-foot-long fortified bridge built across the river and painted bright white. It was so vast that numerous wooden structures were built upon it, and traders would stop along the bridge once to buy and sell goods in the many stalls. The settlement had structures on both northern and southern sides of the Vangi. However, the Aspis Consortium sowed the seeds of their own destruction by using the station as a sourcing location for slaves, which they then sold to Cheliax and Sargava. 15 years ago, the Ekujae Elves had had enough of this situation. They descended in force and showed the Aspis Consortium this would not be allowed to come to pass on their watch. All members of the Aspis Consortium were killed, and other citizens were sent packing. The city has never been reclaimed. The Ekujae still watch over the abandoned city to ensure the Consortium does not make any foolish attempts to resume its operations in the Mugumo Plains. The Zeng nomads of the plains, however, still make use of the vital crossing at Whitebridge to this day. Darkreach Station. Darkreach Station, a third outpost established by Bloodcove and strategically positioned along the Little Vangi, emerged approximately 3 decades ago. Its purpose was to facilitate trade between the prosperous mines of the Bandu Hills and the bustling markets of Bloodcove. During its initial years, Darkreach flourished, serving as a vibrant hub of commerce. However, its prosperity was abruptly brought to a devastating end, when a mysterious force laid waste to the settlement. The inhabitants vanished without a trace, leaving behind only their haunting silhouettes among charred foundations. Speculation regarding the cause of Darkreach's downfall run rampant. Some entertain the possibility that it was the diamond miners retaliating against Aspis Consortium involvement in their affairs. Others suspect the Aspis Consortium themselves of orchestrating the annihilation to eliminate a potential competitor that might have taken control of the town. Still others speculate a darker and more ancient force was at play here. The truth may never be known. Finally, let's look at the geographical region of the Kaava Lands. The Kaava Lands is the peninsular region situated along the western coast of the Mwangi Expanse between the Vangi River and Desperation Bay. In contrast to the neighboring jungles, perhaps due to the colder air blowing over the Arcadian Ocean, this area suffers a slightly milder climate, while still exuding its own unique beauty. The symphony of soaring birds and cascading waterfalls harmonizes with the gentle rustling of leaves, casting dappled sunlight upon the forest floor. Vibrant insects dance among the rainforest's branches, pursued by colorfully plumed avian creatures and reptiles. The name Kaava Lands derives from the Kaava, the dominant people of the interior jungle. Superficially resembling primates, closer observation reveals their reptilian eyes and their coats of shifting colors. Kaavas are prevalent throughout the Kaava Lands, and possess a reputation for hostility towards outsiders. In truth, they adhere to strict social orders and harbor deep mistrust towards humanoids, perceiving even the slightest caution among them as acts of aggression. Only the Kaava themselves truly understand whether they possess a centralized society, but rumors persist of a monarch presiding over a hidden spring, where they raise and train venomous snakes who are their trusted companions in battle. The dangers lurking within the undergrowth extend beyond the Kaava. Murderous Charaka live here, as well as territorial groups of Bekyar humans and corrupted and dangerously hostile halflings who display little friendliness towards intruders. In the eastern reaches, one more group native to this land are the Grippli, whose largest settlement of Krahirik has served as a resting place for Teralu dwarves, members of the Pathfinder Society, and other foreign travelers in the region. The forests of the Kaava Lands undoubtedly hold numerous secrets. Beyond the legend surrounding the Mbeke and Kiedu ruins, stories speak of select individuals, typically free captains of renown from the shackles, being granted safe passage through the Kaava Lands, allowing them to conceal their wealth and knowledge within this heavily guarded territory. One highly sought-after luxury throughout the Mwangi Expanse is a spice known as miracle root, which imparts an earthy flavor that is felt more in the body than on the tongue. Despite numerous attempts, controlled cultivation of miracle root remains elusive. Patches of this rare plant can be found scattered across the Kaava Lands, tempting those who seek it, but also exposing them to the risk of encountering a hostile Kaava. Those daring enough to pursue this spice often establish themselves in the Kaldaru city of Senghor, located at the tip of the peninsula on which the Kaava Land sits. Important locations in the Kaava Lands. Once again, the most important location in the region, Senghor, I will discuss later in my section on the major polities. The ruins of Boali. Just north along the coast from Senghor are the ruins of Boali. I've recounted the history of Boali already in my history section, so I won't dwell on it here, but suffice it to say that in 2603, when the Kaldaru arrived in the region, the Boali welcomed them and offered them land. In turn, they requested their young men and women of marriable age be offered up in marriage exchanges. The Kaldaru agreed, but soon learned the Boali had become corrupted by a dark power, sacrificing some of the newborn children to their dark gods, hoping to release this ancient entity that had been trapped in the heart of the Kaava Lands. The Kaldaru retribution was swift and ruthless. When they destroyed Boali, they did a very thorough job. The walls were pulled down, buildings were destroyed, and the harbor was filled with boulders. The Kaldaru of Senghor do not speak of these events with outsiders, and few among their own people even know the full history here. Today, the ruins of Boali are home only to a few tribes of Charaka and the occasional group of shipwrecked sailors. It is said that on moonlit nights the ghostly sounds of running footsteps and clashing swords can be heard in the empty streets. Kadodi. Kadodi is the site of a massive temple city built by the Ghol-gan in the post-classical period. Constructed in the heart of the Kaava jungle, along the Ubinga River, which flows out into Desperation Bay, this massive complex is a sight to behold. During the Age of Darkness, an Asura named Parveen entered the material world here and studied the ancient relics of the Ghol-gan. She assembled a vast army to her, but before she could begin her great conquest, old mage Jatembe and his famous disciples defeated her and sealed her into the temple using various ancient magical wards. Over the years, the wards weakened, and her dark influence was able to corrupt both the people of nearby Boali as well as the local halfling tribes that lived in the Kaava Lands. When the Aspis Consortium from Bloodcove began to dismantle the old Ghol-gan structure, she was very nearly released, but an alliance of the Pathfinder Society, the Ekujae Elves, and the Griepli from Krihirik averted possible disaster. Today, Griepli shamans monitor the temple city, reinforcing the magical wards and making sure none of the Azura's corrupted servants come to release her again. Mbeke. Further up the Ubinga River from Kadodi sits the ruins of the capital city of the Mbeke people, which had been called Kiedu in antiquity. According to legend, the human civilization here was all irrevocably transformed into leopards sometime after Earthfall. After this, rumors of the magical Mbeke leopards dwelling in the Kaava Lands and possessing divining abilities began to surface. Many of these rumors stemmed from a story about a young boy who saved an Mbeke leopard from a hunting trap and was shown two visions, one of prosperity and one of disaster. After the boy set the leopard free, he found his selfless act had been rewarded with a life full of rich soil and bountiful harvests. In the meantime, the ruins of Kiedu, the old Mbeke capital, were settled by the Haza halflings. Although Parveen herself has been either destroyed or permanently sealed into the vault at Kadodi, the Haza halflings here remain a corrupted people, with many today revering Lamashtu, the mother of nightmares, or Zura, the vampire queen. In fact, a large number of the halfling leaders in the tribe are vampires themselves, possessing a vast strength far exceeding that which their humble size suggests they might possess. Zura's Mouth. Speaking of Zura, deeper still in the Kaava Lands lies a series of springs and pools known as Zura's Mouth, which serve as the source of the slow and broad Ubinga River. A number of tribes, including both Bekyar and Haza halfling groups, make pilgrimages to this occult place and use the pools for ritual sacrifice by drowning. The bodies don't last long here, however, as the Ubinga's upper reaches are home to the crimson makayika fish, a schooling carnivorous breed similar to piranhas. Krihirik. The Griepli settlement of Krihirik lies approximately 10 miles inside the jungle's border, and 20 feet off the ground. Narrow rope bridges connect a few dozen tree dwellings overhead, forming a sizable and secure community. Although Grippli have a large number of settlements throughout the Kaava Lands, Crihirik represents one of their older and larger communities, and remains an important cultural capital for the Grippli people. Today, Crihirik is led by the Fiend Keeper Purpurup, a shaman whose disciples are responsible for maintaining the powerful wards that seal the evils of Kadodi in place, and the city's lorekeeper, Mother Bogwin, who keeps and maintains the city's long oral history. The Grippli of Crihirik maintain friendly relations with the Zenge nomads of the Mugumo Plains, the Bonuat villages along the Vanji River, the Ekujae Elves, the Talaru dwarves, and the Pathfinder Society, but they are not friendly with the Aspis Consortium or with the government of Bloodcove. A look at the four major polities of the western Mwangi Expanse. Cloudspire and the Mbeke dwarves. Although the true account of the Mbeke history is covered in my general history section, the Mbeke themselves tell a different story of their origin. It typically goes something like this. In ancient times, dwarves embarked on a grand journey to the sky. Along their march, they encountered countless marvels, temples, treasures, enchantments, and enigmas. One intrepid group emerged from a group of rocky cliffs encircling the valley and gazed at the vast expanse of blue above, and they mistook the sky for yet another cavern. Sages stroked their beards, and engineers wielded their tools, and the dwarves resolved to breach the celestial vault. Scaling the tallest mountain in the land, they reinforced the sky's structure and began to dig. Dwarves, renowned for their tunneling prowess, pierced through the firmament of the world itself, and entered the plane of air. The denizens of the plain were astounded by these unexpected visitors. At first, a mighty hurricane spirit attempted to intimidate the dwarves, but they had faced fiercer foes on the earth. The dwarves stood their ground. Next, a powerful genie of the western wind enticed the dwarves with precious treasures, hoping they would depart. However, nothing compared to the wonders crafted by the dwarves themselves. Finally, a curious cloud dragon inquired about the purpose of the dwarves' endeavor, referencing the stars above and below. Realizing their misconception, the dwarves descended back to Golarion, the world they knew, and surveyed the valley from whence they had emerged. It became evident that it would serve as a suitable home, and so they settled there. Ever since, the Mbekes and cloud dragons have forged a lasting friendship, bound by mutual respect and admiration. Although this mythical history of the Mbeke dwarves tunneling into the plane of air and befriending the dragons there is certainly apocryphal, it is true that since about -2000, the Mbekes have lived alongside the cloud dragons in the Terwa Uplands in a state of mutual partnership and cooperation. Although the Mbekes do not worship dragons, they hold them in great reverence, and their friendship with these majestic creatures has become a defining aspect of Mbeke culture. Besides the legendary quest for the sky, the War of Split Hearts from 3841 to 3844 stands as the most significant event in Mbeke history. The High King Nikobe, the final heir of the Mbeke royal lineage, was notorious for his volatile temper and paranoia. When his son tragically succumbed to illness, Nikobe's anger and suspicion escalated dramatically. Firm in his belief that his son had been poisoned, the High King clandestinely plotted and enlisted loyal followers. The 9 days of blood ensued, during which masked enforcers apprehended thousands of dwarves, leading them to Cloudspire's bridges for beheading. The wellspring, a deep pool beneath the city, flowed crimson with blood. This gruesome act ignited a bloody civil war, pitting sibling against sibling, and ravaging cities and mining halls. The conflict reached a stalemate, until the tides turned with the support of a group of rebel cloud dragons, led by the young Sakura-Rot the Mist. Eventually the war concluded with the demise of Nikobe and the majority of the Mbeke aristocracy. In the aftermath, the shattered monarchy gave way to the establishment of the modern Mbeke system of elective kingship. More recently, Mbeke attention has been consumed by the Corsair Wars. Thriving as a populous and urbanized realm, the Mbeke dwarves rely heavily on trade. Dwarven ships carry valuable cargoes such as wool, finely crafted finished goods, and raw ore mined from the uplands along the Garundi coastlines towards the ports of western Avestan. In return, they acquire hardwoods, textiles, silks, and spices. The abundance of wealth on board these vessels has attracted the attention of the pirates of the Shackles, sparking a brutal conflict. The pirates would gather in packs to engage the slower but heavily armored Mbeke merchant ships, only to disperse before cloud dragons arrived to unleash devastating lightning bolts upon their hulls. Under Hurricane King Kurdak Bonefist's reign, these sporadic skirmishes escalated into full-scale naval battles, resulting in significant losses on both sides. It was initially believed that Kurdak's death would bring an end to the Corsair Wars, but fate dictated otherwise. In 4718, the Chalish colony of Sargava declared independence, becoming the Free Nation of Vidrian. This decision severed Sargava's tribute payments to the free captains, leading to an excess of pirates seeking new prey. The Mbeke dwarves became the natural targets, and conflict has resumed. The Mbekes, belonging to the Irgaxan people, or surface dwarves, possess distinct physical features and cultural practices. Typically, Mbeke dwarfs have dark brown skin, often with an umber hue, and their black hair tends to form tight, springy curls. It is not uncommon for Mbekes to start graying in their early middle age. Their eye color predominantly come in ranges of brown and hazel, but gold and grey eyes are reasonably common as well, with green eyes being rare but not unheard of. Compared to other dwarves, Mbekes generally have a leaner build, though they still appear quite stocky by human standards. However, the most noticeable characteristic of an Mbeke dwarf is their cultural custom of shaving their beards and keeping their hair cropped very short, a practice which raises eyebrows among visiting dwarves who almost universally prefer to grow out their beards and hair. Regarding attire, Mbeke dwarves of all genders commonly wear billowing pants, loose shirts, and caftans. Headscarves are popular, wrapped around the forehead, leaving the hair on the top of the head visible. These scarves are often brightly colored, intricately embroidered, and represent the best fabric an Mbeke family possesses. Mbekes hold a particular affinity for amber, as it symbolizes electricity, lightning, and cloud dragons. They consider it the most fashionable and most desirable precious metal, especially since amber is scarce in the Terwa Uplands and must be imported at great expense. Mbekes also incorporate shed scales from cloud dragons into their decorations. These scales are so common in the region that even relatively poor dwarves may possess such jewelry. Notably, esteemed judges and merchants may don armor or cloaks made entirely from dragon scale. However, the most cherished Mbeke heirlooms are carved from discarded cloud dragon horns, and a dragon horn ring will often hold profound sentimental value. The Mbeke legislative body is known as the Assembly of Speakers, where deliberation can extend for days, focusing on matters of law and ritual. Voting within the assembly is determined by the military strength of each fellowship during a time of crisis. However, even the most prosperous or powerful in the fellowship is considered an equal to others. Apart from their role in legislation, speakers are also responsible for appointing judges to handle disputes and crimes. In Mbeke society, a king is merely the dwarf entrusted with executive authority over an Mbeke community or clan, regardless of its size. Kings also assume the crucial role of leading their fellowship's warriors into battle. Kings typically serve a 10-year term, though they may serve for multiple terms if popular, but rarely serve more than 2. Collectively, the kings form an assembly of their own, and the High King of Cloudspire is chosen through a weighted voting process conducted by the Assembly of Kings. This High King serves as the supreme executive and war leader for the Mbeke. All kings, including the High King, can be removed from their position by their respective assemblies in cases of incompetence or signs of tyranny. The current High King is High King Leksanji, an aging centrist king who seeks to find some means of compromise between kings like the peacemaking King Moshele, who believes that the Corsair Wars are a costly and harmful affair, and that the pirates can and should be negotiated with and bought off, and the hardline saber-rattling kings like King Thabsing Bloodeye of Clareng, who has led the majority of Mbeke anti-pirate efforts, planning campaigns, springing traps, and sinking ships from the prow of his own mighty flagship, the Kept Oath. Most dangerous of all, perhaps, is the growing influence of Mage King Kawu, who is an anti-pirate hardliner and a powerful sky mage. He has proposed using the power of the Celestial Fellowship, a coalition of Mbeke sky mages, to tilt the Eye of Abendego and send its tendrils lashing through the shackles, smashing all the pirate ports at once. This rather apocalyptic solution is getting far more support from the Mbeke citizenry than it rightly should. In addition to the great influence wielded by the speakers and the kings, the Cloud Dragons hold a unique position in Mbeke society, and the ancient and long-standing alliance between the dragons and the dwarves is commemorated each year with great feasts and celebration. The dragons have long served as advisors to Mbeke assemblies. However, these majestic beings possess fickle natures, and while Mbekes hold great respect for their draconic allies, they typically ensure that the dwarf majority always prevails in any potential decision-making assemblies. Certain fellowships, such as the Dragon Wardens of Cloudspire, are entrusted with serving the dragons and acting as diplomatic representatives both to and on behalf of their draconic allies. This entails providing gifts of food and treasure, while also persuading cloud dragons to engage in occasional acts of assistance. Younger dragons find delight in patrolling Mbeke territories, relishing the opportunity to disrupt the plans of raiders or pirates. Among Mbeke councils, dragons are welcomed for their wisdom and experience. One notable figure is Sakura-Rot, an ancient cloud dragon who has offered guidance to the Mbeke kingdom since the War of Split Hearts. Although the aged dragon seldom speaks these days, she possesses unparalleled knowledge of crises and disasters in the uplands. In times of dire need, her presence offers a voice of composure and reassurance. Mbeke faith is similar to that of other dwarves, worshipping the entirety of the dwarven pantheon and making an enemy of the darksmith Droskar. However, the Mbeke also worship one additional deity, named Uvuko, the Diamond Ring. Uvuko takes the form of a mighty cloud dragon, and his worship is not limited to the Mbeke. His symbol is found among various Zenj tribes, Iruxi tribes, and even among the Teralu. Though dragons themselves are often circumspect about their spiritual beliefs, it's clear the cloud dragons of the Terwa Uplands also venerate this deity, and it's obvious that Mbeke worship of Uvuko began as they developed their alliances with the dragons. Uvuko is a rejuvenative deity of both earth and sky. Uvuko's followers share a common belief in the inherent nature of change, both within themselves and in others. Just as Uvuko's perpetual movement rejuvenates the world around him, personal development and the power of choice enable the flourishing of the individual. When beings are denied the freedom to choose, their energies dissipate, causing harm to the self and the community. Consequently, devotees of Uvuko vehemently oppose slavery and servitude, readily fighting to eradicate these injustices. Uvuko's worshippers also share an unwavering commitment to embracing the future with enthusiasm and anticipation. The past is regarded as fertile ground to be cultivated, while the future represents limitless possibilities like the open sky. Evolving into a better version of oneself, preparing for whatever lies ahead, and fostering self-awareness lie at the core of Uvuko's teachings. Recognizing the need to move on from a place, relationship, or occupation is revered among Uvuko's faithful. Constructed by ancient dwarven craftsmen in the aftermath of the quest for the sky citadel of Cloudspire stands as the spiritual and cultural epicenter of the Mbeke dwarves. Revered in tales and melodies, it is known among the Mbekes as the city that commences and concludes, symbolizing their emergence as a people and serving as the ultimate stronghold that will endure till the end of days. Every dwarf in the Terwa Uplands aspires to visit Cloudspire at least once in their lifetime. Beyond its symbolic significance, Cloudspire is a thriving metropolis, teeming with activity. Its grand halls reverberate with the clanging of forges and the hum of workshops. Its bustling markets offer a cornucopia of goods from distant lands, spanning the realms of Garand and Avistan. It proudly serves as the seat of the High King, governing the Mbeke people, and surpasses all other Mbeke settlements in size, easily thrice their magnitude. The entire mountain has been hollowed out like a carved apple, creating an immense void spanning thousands of feet in diameter, exposed to the open sky above and plunging into an abyssal pool below. Within this hollowed expanse, the dwarven city resides, with its expansive boulevard spiraling downwards and an intricate network of shops, homes, and temples burrowing further into the heart of the mountain. Ingenious elevators, utilizing counterweights and pulleys, facilitate the movement of people up and down, while delicate stone bridges span the vast chasm, connecting the various sections of the citadel. Surrounding the city itself are the Aeries, vast and lavishly adorned caverns, each sizable enough to accommodate dragons of various proportions. Countless dragons dwelling within the Terwa Uplands have sought refuge in these Aeries, receiving esteemed treatment as cherished guests and valued allies under the watchful guardianship of the Dragon Wardens. While many dragons pass through this sanctuary during different stages of their lives, as the older ones tend to find the commotion and clamor of the city tiresome, the local dragon population predominantly consists of youthful individuals. Situated within their hall, marked by the scars of lightning on the upper levels of the hollow, directly opposite the Aeries, the esteemed celestial fellowship of dwarven wizards, scholars, and sages dedicates their existence to the mastery of aerial magic. Originating from humble apprentices and knowledge seekers who aspired to learn from the cloud dragon patrons of the Mbeke dwarves, this fellowship has evolved over centuries into a focused and highly skilled magical academy. Dwarves hailing from all corners of the Terwa Uplands embark on journeys to apprentice themselves to the Sky Sages, despite the arduous and extensive course of study that awaits them there. The Celestial Fellowship proudly houses the most esteemed library of arcane knowledge within the Terwa Uplands. Its shelves are adorned with the writings of both dwarves and dragons, while a notable collection of relics from the Shori civilization have also found its place within Cloudspire. Scholars from institutions such as the Magambaya and even Nex frequently grace the halls of this prestigious establishment, enriching the pursuit of knowledge with their presence. Close to the magical academy are the keepers of the tradition of Gimthur. Gimthur is a revered and mystical Mbeke tradition that revolves around imbuing the very essence of the wind into arrows, granting them unwavering flight and devastating impact. It is whispered that a masterful Gimthur archer possesses the ability to shoot an arrow with such precision that it defies the laws of physics, effortlessly bending its trajectory around corners to pierce even the sturdiest of steel plates. With their remarkable skills honed through meticulous training, the Gimthur archers exemplify the pinnacle of archery prowess and play a vital role in the military might of the Mbeke. Moving towards the center of the Sky Citadel, hovering above a platform at the heart of the hollow, an awe-inspiring sight awaits: the Grand Brass Bell. Its colossal size beggars the imagination, while its weight, an impressive 40-ton, anchors it firmly in place. Adorned with intricate reliefs depicting the rich history shared between the Mbeke dwarves and their revered Cloud Dragon allies, this masterpiece stands as a testament to their enduring bond. Dedicated to precise timekeeping for the city, the esteemed Fellowship of the Great Clock takes charge of maintaining the bell. The resounding toll of the Dragon Bell reverberates for miles around the city. Also in the center is Nikobe's Hall, which was once the Grand Palace of the Sky Citadel, but has remained closed since the War of Split Hearts. And across the way from the palace is the Grand Assembly, where the Assembly of Kings meets to gather, discuss, and vote on crucial matters at hand. Many levels below, but located evenly beneath them, lies an ancient font simply known as the Wellspring. A solitary ancient structure can be found along the banks of the Wellspring, a modest temple dedicated to Torag, whose diligent clergy safeguard the purity of the precious spring. Within the enigmatic waters of the Wellspring, pale, sightless fish dart sporadically, adding an ethereal presence to the icy-cold currents that persist even on scorching summer days. By ancient decree, the pool is sacrosanct to the city, and it serves as the primary water source for the dwarves. The Wellspring assumes a significant role in Mbeke society during funeral rites as well. When a member of the Mbeke community passes away, their mortal remains are consigned to the flames, but not without solemn ritual. A small token or statuette representing the departed is ceremoniously cast into the Wellspring, symbolizing the return of their soul to the ancestral homeland of the dwarves. Akravel and the Ekujae Elves. The Ekujae were the elves who remained behind during the Earthfall Cataclysm to fight against the dragon god Dahak, and who managed to prevent his rampage across the young world by ensnaring him in their Ayudara, or Elf Gates. Since that time, they have remained in the region near the gate, on the western fringes of the Mwangi jungle along the length of the Mugumo Plains. Their reputation varies among the diverse cultures that surround them. To the esteemed scholars of the Magambaya in the academic city of Nantambu, the Ekujae are revered as an ancient civilization of erudite sages, occasionally venturing into their city to impart knowledge to eager students or share rare botanical specimens with the university's extensive libraries. Among the scattered human tribes of the Mwangi jungle, the Ekujae are shrouded in mystery, embodying both unwavering protectors of the untamed wilderness and enigmatic beings viewed with equal parts awe and superstition. The Aspis consortium of Bloodcove, on the other hand, perceive the Ekujae as formidable adversaries due to their relentless assault on their slavers, such as the notorious massacre at Whitebridge Station. The Ekujae hold a certain skepticism towards most foreigners, particularly humans. Their ancestral lands boast abundant reserves of gold and other precious treasures, which has attracted generations of fortune-seekers who have pillaged the western Mwangi region without offering much in return. The Ekujae bear a particular animosity towards non-Mwangi humans due to clashes with colonialist slavers. Recent violent encounters with the Aspis Consortium have further fueled the Ekujae's determination to dismantle any slaver outposts. Additionally, the Ekujae have served as guardians of sites imbued with great power, or harboring dormant malevolence, places they have no desire for reckless adventurers or sinister forces to unearth. While Ekujae culture firmly believes in judging individuals based on their own actions, they approach outsiders with caution, and are hesitant to form alliances or share their sacred knowledge. Through their long elven lives, the Ekujae have witnessed other shorter-lived mortals repeat the same mistakes again and again, with specific groups or rulers who were deemed trustworthy often perishing too quickly, being replaced by individuals driven by personal ambitions that sought to exploit the Ekujae in one way or another. Consequently, trespassers venturing into Ekujae lands are swiftly confronted, although it would be an oversimplification to label them as xenophobic. The Ekujae are not inherently territorial. A humble fruit merchant or virtuous explorer has little to fear from an Ekujae, as their scouts may discreetly shadow and observe such visitors, driven as much by compassion as suspicion. For those that are welcomed into their lands, the Ekujae have made it their custom to ensure the safety of their guests, protecting them from perils of both the jungle's wildlife and its more ancient and sinister evils. Like other Garundi elves, the Ekujae are typically darker skinned than their northern Iodine kinsfolk, and they tend to have black-brown or rose-gold hair with wide, jet-black eyes. Of all three tribes of Mualijae elves, individual Ekujae display the greatest variation in skin tone, ranging from dusky and olive tones to the darker hues typical of the Alijae and the Kalajae. Their physique leans towards a more muscular build compared to other elves as well, a result of their rigorous training as warriors, yet they retain the lanky and agile nature characteristic of their kind. As part of their traditional customs, Ekujae adorn their bodies with intricate patterns of white paint. These markings represent an individual elf's family and clan, but they can also convey information about their profession, achievements, personal history, or other such details. Ekujae predominantly don garments in shades of green and brown, both for practicality as camouflage in the jungle environment and their significance as colors of their people. Their attire commonly incorporates materials such as wood, leaves, leather, fur, and bone. Notably, they possess great skill in crafting bark cloth, achieved by pressing the inner bark of trees into sheets and applying wood-warping magic to enhance the quality of these textiles. The refined bark cloth and the intricate wooden jewelry produced by the Ekujae hold significant value in markets across the region. The Ekujae form cohesive social units called clans, which in turn establish their own villages and towns. The level of self-sufficiency displayed by these clans often leads outsiders to mistakenly perceive them as independent political entities. However, that is not so. All Ekujae collectively actually comprise a unified nation, and maintain robust interconnections between clans, though these relationships may not be readily apparent to individuals with shorter lifespans than the Elves. Another thing that distinguishes Ekujae clans from Zenge tribes is that Ekujae do not inherit their clans by birth, although they always consider their mother's clan as part of their family. Instead, they make a conscious choice to join a clan once they reach adulthood. It is expected that Ekujae will remain loyal to their chosen clan for their entire lives, as joining or leaving a clan is regarded as a solemn and significant decision. While few clans refuse a request to join or leave, it should be noted that banishment from a clan carries such a level of shame that it is considered a punishment only slightly less severe than a death sentence. Ekujae clans employ a democratic process to nominate and elect their rulers and advisors, with all adult members having a voice in the final decisions. In cases where elections are particularly contentious, clan members may request a demonstration of capability from potential rulers to prove their worth. Once a ruler is chosen and accepted, both the ruler and the clan collaborate in selecting the ruler's advisors. These advisors typically have an area of expertise such as magic, military strategy, or spirituality. Ekujae place great importance on a specific type of advisor, called linguists. Linguists fulfill multiple roles as diplomats, translators, storytellers, and historians. Yul-Ral, the elven deity of magic, holds a significant place in the hearts of the Ekujae as their nation's patron. They perceive their duty as guardians and scholars to be a tribute to this revered goddess. Alongside their devotion to Yul-Ral, the Ekujae also worship a pantheon of traditional elven gods. Among them are Ketefis, Findaladlara, and Calistria, all of whom I discuss in more detail in my Lesser Gods Part 2 video. In addition to traditional deity worship, Ekujae spirituality is also expressed in their intricate relationship with the soul, recognizing the existence of 4 distinct spirits that shape an individual's being. Each of these spirits possesses its own name and distinct personality, and they may not always align harmoniously. In fact, they believe conflicts between specific spirits are often the source of internal turmoil. Ekujae believe that nurturing all 4 spirits is vital for an individual's happiness. Neglecting any one spirit consistently leads to discontent and strife. Hence, introspection and self-care hold paramount importance in Ekujae society, allowing individuals to maintain harmony within themselves and their spirits. Ekujae elves also have both an oral and musical tradition and a love of games. The dancing game of Daikada, for example, is both a dance and a competition, typically held accompanied by drummed and hummed music. In addition to preserving their rich oral and musical heritage, the Ekujae have devised a remarkable method of record-keeping, known as record trees. These trees are meticulously nurtured to develop distinct patterns in their trunks and branches, serving as semi-permanent archives of significant information and historical events. From an early age, Ekujae individuals are taught to comprehend and read the record trees, so that the sacred history of their people will remain preserved for generations, grown into the very land itself. While Ekujae share the elven love of artistry, their jewelry is typically understated and crafted from natural materials. Metals in general are rare, and gold in particular is considered taboo. This is because the Ekujae hold a profound belief regarding the cursed nature of the gold that lies beneath their lands. They view it as the cooled breath and blood of Dahak, spilled during the ancient battles between the dragon god and the Elves. According to their beliefs, the curse of Dahak taints all gold, causing even the kindest dragons and the noblest humans to covet it, and ensuring that greed for gold will inevitably lead to bloodshed. As a result, no Ekujae willingly adorns themselves with gold, with one exception. The Circle of the Kaledi. The Circle of the Kaledi have taken a solemn oath to dedicate their lives to combating Dahak and his minions, ever vigilant for the return of the Great Darkness. These brave individuals wear ritually purified gold as a symbol of their worthiness and readiness to confront the god, signifying that their souls are capable of piercing even the flesh of a deity. It serves as a visible mark, identifying them as living sacrifices in the eternal struggle against their ancestral foe. Being granted the title of Kaledi is simultaneously the highest honor and a deep sorrow, carrying immense weight and significance. Ekujae settlements can be found across the region, but there are three important ones worth looking at in more detail. Akravel. Akravel is the dwelling place of the Leopard clan, situated in close proximity to both the Hunter Gate way station and an ancient temple dedicated to Ketefis they built near it during the Age of Darkness. Over the long millennia, Akravel evolved from a small outpost accommodating only a handful of individuals to becoming the cultural heart of the Ekujae society and arguably acting as the capital of the Ekujae nation. Its interconnected longhouses and well-maintained gardening platforms have expanded across the treetops of vast ancient trees located on the outskirts of the Mwangi jungle. Unlike other settlements near dangerous ruins or artifacts, Akravel exudes a sense of permanence and stability. Akravel has long held a dual role, as both a strategic fallback point from threats originating in either the Mwangi jungle or from the west like the Aspis Consortium, as well as serving as an ideal launching station for operations. Additionally, the ancient temple of Ketefis serves as a sanctuary for those wounded, and its clerics are among the greatest healers in the region, providing a safe place for ranging Ekujae to rest and recover. The central area of Akravel features communal spaces and training grounds, surrounded by an ever-growing cluster of private residences. Additionally, there is a communal sleeping area for elves from other clans and the occasional foreign visitor. Most recently, the magical Hunter Gate Ayudara has reactivated, an event that the Ekujae do not fully understand, and which has garnered both attention and concern. Ijo. Ijo is located deeper in the Mwangi jungle. Technically not in the area I would consider part of the western Mwangi region, but part of the central Mwangi region instead. However, it seemed worth mentioning here as we look more closely at the Ekujae. Ijo is the closest thing that the Ekujae have to a civilian settlement, populated primarily by the elderly, by the very young, or by families from various clans who need a break from the warrior discipline they are famous for. The primary structures in Ijo are a collection of easily defensible homes, which are shared among the community based on the immediate needs of its members. The settlement also provides communal spaces where the responsibilities of raising children can be shared among trusted community members. This arrangement allows warriors who are required elsewhere in the Mwangi Expanse to leave their loved ones in the care of those they explicitly trust. Ijo is one of the few places the Ekujae strictly restrict access to, refusing entry to outsiders. Most of Ijo's inhabitants engage in peaceful activities, such as small-scale farming, trading, crafting, and pursuing knowledge. The Circles. Located in the Mugumo Plains, the Circles breaks many of the unspoken rules of the Ekujae settlements. There are no structures built into the trees here. Instead, it is a walled city comprised of a cluster of interconnecting circular walls, filled with permanent clay buildings, some of considerable size, and visible from miles around. The Circles is a place that is equal parts academy and martial training ground. All young Ekujae come here as they enter young adulthood, a vital rite of passage in which they master the arts of warcraft or magical training, as well as gaining an education on the wider world around them. Those who train as warriors spend less time studying combat forms, as many have already been doing this since they were children, and more time learning the threats of the jungle and how to combat demons and dragons especially. Those who favor arcane combat experience a more melded method of learning, building on their skills as they learn the associated theory and lore to support their studies. Upon proving their capabilities during their training, Ekujae trainees face one final test of skill, accompanying a Kaledi on a mission. These missions are designed to challenge the trainees' abilities without posing a lethal threat. Upon their return, the Kaledi assesses the trainees' performance to determine if they are ready to stand on their own. Over time, many Ekujae individuals will return to the circles to further refine their skill, expand their knowledge, and mentor new trainees who join after them. One notable aspect of the circles that the Ekujae have occasionally shared with outsiders is their library. This library is filled with lore brought back here by the Ekujae scouts, including various books, scrolls, vellum, and writing materials from across the region and beyond. Together, these resources form a highly focused collection that explores various threats and ways to counter them, rivaling some of the greatest libraries in the world in this regard. Bloodcove. Bloodcove is a chaotic place, and a veritable hive of scum and villainy. There was once a small Bonuat village at the mouth of the Vanji River, but Taldan merchants arrived in 2653, and the city was never the same again. The foreign arrivals renamed the city Bloodcove, upon witnessing the crimson waters that flowed down from the Vanji. It rapidly grew from a small village to a haven for pirate captains looking for an open-minded port on the mainland where they could sell their ill-gotten wares. Today it remains a hub where corsairs can engage in legitimate trade while maintaining their own port. Bloodcove is perceived differently by different individuals. To some, it embodies the essence of a bustling trade city, while to others it represents a treacherous den inhabited by thieves and murderers. Those seeking rare or illicit items need look no further. Officially, Bloodcove is ruled by Grand Admiral Harthik Barzoni. However, the true power lies with the Aspis Consortium, a powerful trade syndicate headquartered in Cheliax that operates across the entire Inner Sea region. Although technically a Chelish organization, this enterprise considers itself quite independent from House Thrune, preferring to grow their own power, and owing no real particular national allegiance. In Bloodcove, they pretty much run the show. They often directly determine the Grand Admiral's selection, and have the ability to curtail the extent of his authority. The first sight that most visitors observe as they approach Bloodcove is the colossal mangrove trees, unique to the Mwangi coast. The entire city is constructed atop and around the roots of these trees, with platforms, boardwalks, and suspensions extending over the blood-red water. Those who embrace the perils of Bloodcove can truly appreciate its beauty, the convergence of the jungle and the sea, where the majestic trees blend with the red ocean. Sunrise and sunset are spectacular here, painting vibrant hues in both the skies above and the waves below. Bloodcove stands out among the modest-sized civilizations scattered along the Fever Sea as a powerful independent city-state. Unlike the majority of pirate havens in the north, Bloodcove maintains a semblance of order and an air of legitimacy with foreign powers, even though it has just as many pirates as any port in the Shackles. The influence of the Aspis Consortium on regional politics, no doubt. As one of the most bustling trade hubs in the Mwangi Expanse, it possesses the advantage of always being able to accept goods obtained through illicit means. In Bloodcove there is no concept of black markets, as banned items are openly sold on the streets. Trust is not easily gained in the city, but respect carries weight. Being a newcomer does not automatically make one a target, but caution is always advised. Once an outsider earns the respect of the locals, they can delve beneath the surface of Bloodcove and truly appreciate its multifaceted nature. Some residents dub Bloodcove the City of Opportunity, and indeed it is, for those who can withstand the chaos. The more business one conducts in Bloodcove, the more their reputation grows, leading to greater prospects, greater rewards, but also inevitably greater danger. That said, despite the sensational tales spun about Bloodcove, one would imagine the city's streets to be engulfed in perpetual warfare. The truth, however, is that Bloodcove's position as a regional economic power demands a certain level of stability. While the city does harbor its fair share of dangerous inhabitants who embody its infamous reputation, most residents are motivated by the pursuit of wealth, not power. Trade tensions do arise, but outbreaks of violence are less frequent than anticipated by outsiders. A complex system of principles and unspoken guidelines exist, determining when and where the use of force is deemed acceptable. Bloodcove boasts a remarkably diverse population. While humans do make up the majority of the city's inhabitants, non-human races account for more than 20% of the population. Tengu jinx-eaters, monkey-goblin corsairs, hobgoblin mercenaries, and others can be spotted enjoying drinks on the docks or participating in lively bidding wars at the market. an array of ancestries from across the Inner Sea find residence or pass through Bloodcove. Of the humans, over half the population have some form of Mwangi heritage, with Zenge and Bonuat peoples being the most common. But plenty of other humans can be found, especially Avestinians of Taldan or Chelish heritage. The influx of Sargavan elites fleeing the Vidric Revolution have also introduced a subtle cultural shift to the city. The average resident of Bloodcove dons garments crafted from linen and satin. Flowing attire takes precedence over heavy layers, reflecting the warmer climate and necessitating lightweight and breathable clothing. Fashion choices often emphasizing draping fabrics and vibrant colors. Long robes, fluid jackets, sleek vests, functional leather straps, and scarves adorning heads and necks are all commonly seen. Adornments, particularly jewelry, are ubiquitous, especially among the pirates, eager to flaunt their spoils. Corsairs are easily recognized by their ostentatious rings covering their fingers and fine necklaces made of gold, silver, and ivory on their necks. Important locations in Bloodcove. The Aspis Consortium Lodge. The official headquarters of the Aspis Consortium in the Mwangi Expanse closely resembles the surrounding buildings in Bloodcove, except for the prominent display of a large Aspis snake above its entrance. Inside, a heavily guarded treasury serves as a secure storage facility for important documents and valuable items. The building often houses dozens of Consortium agents, and most of Bloodcove's other residents wisely steer clear unless they have specific business to attend to. Within the Consortium Lodge, ample resources are available to support potential enterprises housed within the headquarters. Numerous maps detailing areas far beyond the Fever Sea are accessible, providing valuable information for planning expeditions. Meticulously tracked and filed shipping documents and manifests for incoming and outgoing ships give the Consortium an advantage in identifying valuable cargo and securing it before others. The Lodge also maintains records of individuals entering and exiting the city. Currently, Aspis operations in Bloodcove are under the leadership of Malika Fenn, a former Pathfinder who has fully embraced her role as an Aspis agent. Previously, Malika ran a Pathfinder chapter house, acting as a double agent and selling information to both the Aspis Consortium and the Pathfinder Society. Malika grew disillusioned with what she perceived as the Society's great hypocrisy and their failure to care for their own members. This ultimately led her to sell all her knowledge to the Aspis Consortium in exchange for the position of power she currently holds in Bloodcove. The Castellany of the Fever Sea. Situated in the heart of Bloodcove, this remarkable structure is integrated into one of the largest mangrove trees, standing out with its vibrant hues of blue, white, and red. As visitors enter, they are greeted by a foyer adorned with a collection of awards and plaques. Outside, the property is vigilantly guarded by several members of the local militia. Within the Castellany, various chambers cater to the needs of the Grand Admiral. These include living quarters for Harthick, a spacious meeting hall, a dining room, a secure vault, and offices where either the Grand Admiral himself or his trusted associates can be found diligently attending to the daily tasks involved in governing the city. The structure boasts several custom modifications. One notable detail insisted upon by the Admiral is the soundproofing of the walls. Harthick values his privacy and recognizes the importance of safeguarding the confidentiality of those he collaborates with. The Free Trade Square. Perched upon an elevated platform with a commanding view of the harbor, the Free Trade Square serves as the bustling epicenter of commerce in Bloodcove. Traders from far and wide bring their diverse wares from all corners of the Mwangi Expanse, offering a vast array of goods and treasures. Here, resources are exchanged for gems, weapons, armor, clothing, and gold. For those overwhelmed by the abundance of options, experienced market regulars known as chatterers are available to guide newcomers for a small fee. Unlike many markets, the Free Trade Square never closes its doors. Those who find themselves empty-handed during the day can return in the evening to explore the night market, which often presents different offerings. Some merchants exclusively trade after sunset, while others prefer the daylight hours. For those in search of employment or lacking the means to acquire desired items, the Free Trade Square is the ultimate destination. Here, opportunities abound, and those with resourcefulness and determination can find what they seek, whether it be employment prospects or unconventional methods of trade. The Pirate's Hook. This lively tavern offers a wide selection of libations, including ale, mead, grog, stout, beer, and rum, sourced from various corners of Galarian. The owner of this establishment is Bulla Lasgard, a formidable orc woman who once sailed under one of the free captains. When her captain decided to settle in Bloodcove, Bulla followed suit and established the Pirate's Hook. Affectionately known as the Bull, Bulla is no nonsense, but supportive of those who frequent her tavern. During her days as a seafaring pirate, she developed a reputation for crafting unique brews. Occasionally she hosts drinking contests, and those who dare to challenge her earn admiration and unexpected respect among the city's pirates. Bulla's unwavering resilience and formidable constitution make outdrinking the bull a remarkable feat. The Witchlight Inn. Constructed from sturdy mangrove wood, the Witchlight Inn stands as a prominent structure in Bloodcove. During the day it appears like any other inn, but as night falls, observant passers-by catch glimpses of ethereal blue flames flickering in the windows. This enigmatic luminescence adds to the inn's already haunting allure. Due to its unique aura and affordable rates, the Witchlight Inn is often the first choice for newcomers seeking accommodation. The innkeeper, Bishek Obel, is friendly enough, but the rumor in town is that the walls have ears at the Witchlight, and Bishek sells his information to the Aspis Consortium for a tidy profit. Senghor. Senghor stands as a naval powerhouse, renowned for its unmatched engineering prowess and towering harbor walls. These walls have withstood both foreign aggression and the relentless power of the ocean's formidable winds. The dominant presence in Senghor is the Kaldaru people, who came to this land from across the Arcadian Ocean some 2,000 years ago, and despite considerable immigration into Senghor of both native Bonuat and Zenj peoples, as well as other more foreign human settlers, the Kaldaru still comprise about half the population. They are credited as the architects and builders of the city, and their distinctive ships and architectural style set Senghor apart in the Mwangi Expanse. While Senghor prides itself on being a meritocracy, the Kaldaru holds significant sway in the city, occupying important merchant and political positions of power. Senghor is served as a pivotal trade hub, fostering commerce between the Mwangi Expanse and Avestan. Its open markets and relentless efforts in combating pirate ships that plague its trade routes have contributed to its reputation. However, the city has recently veered away from the pragmatic neutrality of its past to engage in political alliances, which have now come at some cost. The fall of Sargava resulted in an alliance with Vidrian, the nation that emerged in the former colony's place. This alliance represents the first major pact between two city-states in the present-day Mwangi Expanse. Both Senghor and Vidrian share a common interest in defending their states from colonizers and foreign influences. However, the agreement was hastily signed by Vidrian under duress, and its terms heavily favor Senghor. As Vidrian grows stronger, resentment towards these agreements grow, and its people voice concerns about the imbalanced terms, pushing for renegotiation. Thus far, Senghor has resisted yielding to these pressures. However, not all is perfectly rosy for Senghor either, despite the beneficial terms of their alliance. With the collapse of Sargava, the colonial nation's monetary agreements with the free captains of the Shackles, which ensured the safety of trade, have ended. Consequently, it's not just the Mbeke dwarves that feel the pain of this. Pirates often target Senghor's trading partners and disrupt its various maritime routes. Senghor's ships find themselves engaged in an ongoing struggle to safeguard its bay and oceans from piracy, ensuring the safety of visiting merchants. In Senghor, the people possess a profound sense of national pride. As one of the most prosperous and influential city-states in the region, its citizens value and embrace the privileges that come with having money and security. Senghor's core principles are rooted in freedom, fairness, and independence, and its residents would never compromise these values, regardless of any monetary temptations. Pirates, and especially slavers, are therefore seen as despicable scoundrels, to be relentlessly pursued rather than engaged in trade, regardless of the potential profits from their ill-gotten gains. Likewise, Senghor has adamantly rejected the intrusion of foreign powers, especially those with a history of violence or exploitation, for it cherishes its autonomy and guards against any footholds that might jeopardize its principles. Although the values of fairness and freedom may seem to paint them as an idyllic culture, they are not a pacifist people either. They got involved in the Vidric Revolution and helped them defeat a Shackles armada by blood and saber. For those that recall their more distant past, the Senghori also wiped out the neighboring city-state of Bawali when it was discovered they were engaged in profane devil worship and sacrificing their own children to dark gods. This bloody history has made them fair but tough, and outsiders may occasionally unfairly stereotype the Senghori as having a holier-than-thou attitude. In Senghor, marketplaces are held in high regard, serving as the city's lifeblood. To safeguard these bustling hubs of commerce, dedicated market guards roam the streets, ensuring the sanctity remains intact. Clad in striking black and scarlet uniforms, these guards proudly display their weapons, symbolizing both their authority and their commitment to preserving the city's peaceful atmosphere. As a testament to their unwavering confidence, these guardians typically forego heavy armor, relying instead on lightweight protection. However, when the specter of violence looms on the horizon, they swiftly don ceremonial armor, adorned with distinctive ceramic helmets, ready to defend Senghor with unwavering resolve. An interesting mix of deities comprise the majority of Senghori religious practice. Erastil, the god of families and provisions, holds a special place in their veneration. Here his bounty is considered to be the wealth of trade, and it is revered as a means to provide security for both families and the community at large. Mighty Balamdar, the god of big things that tower over small, is invoked to fortify the city walls, bolstering their defenses against potential threats. Although he's not a central figure in most parts of Garand and Avestan, he is very popular on Senghor. Religious depictions here also include Brai, although she is primarily associated with fire and ceramics rather than metal and gears here. Sarenrae, Desna, and Gosrae are worshipped as a triune by Senghori sailors, seeking their aid in navigating the seas using the sun, stars, and currents respectively. Finally, Pharasma is offered prayers and offerings to guide the souls of those lost at sea to their rightful rest. Senghori use a variety of patterns in the adornment of both their clothes and their architecture. Clothing adorned with intricate patterns communicates a person's profession, social class, and so on. Market patterns are typically simple and prominently displayed, often found on the hem of garments. A produce seller, for example, might wear garments featuring sprout and root-like patterns, while a fishmonger's attire could bear stylized fish. Potters are recognized by round marks, while weavers are represented by decorative lines. Family and class patterns, on the other hand, exhibit more diversity, often depicting crashing waves or maritime scenes, ranging in design from the modest to the ornate. Given the importance placed on patterns, it comes as no surprise that weavers are held in high esteem within Senghor. They not only contribute to the vibrant tapestry of colorful clothing, but also meet the demand for intricately crafted rugs, sought after in homes and businesses throughout the city and beyond. Shipbuilders also obviously enjoy great respect in this naval center of trade. Potters, known for their durable and lightweight ceramics, are also similarly valued. Regrettably, fishers and farmers, who sustain the city's food supply, are often underappreciated by their fellow citizens. Finally, it is the merchant class and diplomats that are revered as the driving forces behind Senghor's economy and constitute the city's upper class. Governance in Senghor is provided by a council of representatives from the wealthiest merchant families in the city, called the Senghor Council. However, as 3 merchant families possess the greatest wealth and influence by a large margin, their great power effectively makes the council a body of 3 factions aligned behind the great families. The great families are the Bako family, specialized in the commerce of sugar, coffee, and alcohol. They have established lucrative agreements with numerous farms to buy and sell their bountiful crops. Additionally, the Bakos are renowned as the foremost brewers of beer, skillfully infusing banana, hibiscus, and cassava root into their brews. The secret recipe for their beer is fiercely guarded, and though many spies have attempted to uncover it, they have never yet succeeded. Lord Gan Bako is of mixed Kaldaru and Bonuet descent, and is currently both the head of the house and the master brewer. The Okpara family exercises authority over the fish trade, and also engage in the transport of unusual or magical materials, including perilous tomes and relics. Adventurous by nature, they venture into ancient ruins scattered across the Mwangi Expanse, collecting exotic goods and offering them to the highest bidders. Lady Dini Okpara, a daughter of the esteemed Kaldaru Jaja lineage, currently serves as the Okpara sorceress and scholar of antiquities, leveraging her expertise to navigate the realm of arcane artifacts and mystical lore. The Eku family holds dominion over the textile trade. Weavers from various regions bring their exquisite creations, including Senghor carpets, Ekujae bark cloth, and rare treasures like Anadi silks or Mbeke cloaks, to Eku-controlled shipping facilities, which are then sent all over Garand and beyond. The Eku family is unique among the great families in that they are dwarf and not human, and the current patriarch of the family, Bosede Eku, possesses close ties with distant Mbeke relatives in Cloudspire. Important locations in Senghor. The Senghor Lighthouse. A testament to the indomitable spirit and resilience of the city, the lighthouse stands as a symbol of unwavering determination. Throughout its history, this iconic structure has been demolished and reconstructed 3 times, twice due to natural calamities and once as a result of conflict. Towering above the cityscape, it serves as a prime target for potential attacks, necessitating its dual role as a lighthouse and as a military watchtower. The lighthouse is meticulously designed to fulfill its surveillance function, equipped with 3 large spyglasses that provide panoramic views of the surrounding landscape. Senghor's vigilant guards employ a sophisticated flag-based communication system, enabling swift and effective coordination from the tower's vantage point. The lower floors of the lighthouse serve as an armory and barracks, housing the dedicated city guard ready to defend against any threat. Ascending to the upper floors, visitors discover a treasure trove of knowledge and heritage. A specialized library dedicated to the city's history graces one level, allowing scholars and enthusiasts to delve into the rich tapestry of Senghor's past. Additionally, a captivating museum sits on another level, brimming with artifacts that encapsulate the essence of the city's lore and legends. The Ocean Dock Market. Emerging from an abandoned pier of yesteryears, this vibrant market square began as a humbling trade spot, but swiftly blossomed into a bustling hub of commerce, albeit not quite the equal of the Grand Market. Nestled alongside the shimmering waters, it has become a daily rendezvous for traders from far and wide. A wide flotilla of boats and other floating platforms extend the market well beyond the pier. Adding to its beautiful and unique atmosphere, kite flyers here gracefully dance their colorful kites above the ocean currents, painting the sky with vibrant hues. The Port's Nest. Nestled near the bustling docks of Senghor, the Port's Nest is a lively inn that exudes a sense of adventure. The Port's Nest is renowned as a prime recruiting ground for captains in need of mercenaries and skilled sailors. The inn's thriving business is centered around catering to this specific clientele, which sets it apart from many other establishments in Senghor. It therefore embraces both foreigners and strangers alike, who will find here a refuge and a place to forge new alliances. When it comes to libations, the Port's Nest offers an extensive selection. Guests can savor the familiar tastes of standard rums and palm wines, or venture into more unique territory, with fermented milk beverages and aged spice fruit liqueurs. Patrons can always expect to receive precisely what they ordered, a comforting taste of home thoughtfully served by the experienced hands of Shasa, the seasoned Kaldaru woman that runs the place. The Gnarly Hyena. Despite Senghor's strong disdain for pirates, a discreet haven known as the Gnarly Hyena has emerged within the city to cater to these sorts. This drinking establishment, cleverly hidden in plain sight, offers a refuge where pirates can gather, indulge in food and drink, and partake in games without drawing unwanted attention. The owner of the Gnarly Hyena, Omai, a carefree and unorthodox elf barkeep, seems unfazed by her clientele. However, it is unlikely that the rest of Senghor would share her perspective if the true identities of the hyena's patrons were ever exposed. The Grand Market and Efulida Plaza. The center of the city is open markets from top to bottom, including such local treasure troves as Burash's Lost and Found, the Mixing Mingle, and the Notice Board. Of particular note in this area is the plaza. Deep within the bustling Senghor markets, a revered ancient tree known as Efulida stands as a symbol of opportunity and growth. Under the sheltering shade of this magnificent tree lies the plaza, a gathering place that draws those who seek to learn and secure apprenticeships from skilled artisans and seasoned mentors. It is here that aspiring apprentices arrive armed with their crafted wares, ready to showcase the skills they have acquired, either from their own homes or the villages they hail from. With great pride, they present carefully selected pieces, hoping to capture the attention of talented artisans or influential merchants who can offer them patronage. The items exchanged in this unique setting carry with them a rich history, each trinket carrying a story waiting to be discovered. Collectors eagerly seek out these treasures, hoping to acquire a piece crafted by an artisan destined for fame. Beyond their collectible value, this practice serves a greater purpose. It allows the citizens of Senghor to support and sustain the traditional arts that flourish in the smaller villages and diverse cultural traditions of the Mwangi Expanse. In doing so, they foster a deep connection and appreciation for the ancestral crafts that enrich their society and preserve the cultural heritage of the region.